This podcast is a member of the Place to Be Nation family. Visit us at placetobenation.com, the only place to be in your pop culture world.
Yeah, Frank here, he's got his own billiard room.
Yes, it's the,
Billiard room.
Come on already. We call it the,
The place to be.
Yes, the place to be. The place to be.
Then I shall be there.
Now, it's time. Live and in living color.
The Grandy Man can.
Ugh. Time to play the game!
No, you left me satisfied and smiling. So.
That's what she said.
So why do I want this? I want to make bank, bro. I want to get ass. I want to drive a Range Rover.
Place to be Nation, Scott Criscola and Justin Rosero. This is the Place to Be Podcast.
Very nice, Mr. Crisbola. Oh, I'm sorry, Dennis.
Japanese band Oral Vampire produced a song called The Repo Man and used footage.
Oral Vampire, huh?
Or Aural. A-U-R-A-L. What kind of show is this?
Sounds like some Twilight porn in Michael Lynch's collection there.
Oz went on to star in American Pie, of course. Bismarck. No, was it? Bismarck was on
Liz
Bismarck. No, who's the other guy? I'm getting confused with.
Bismarck, yeah, he dressed as North Dakota.
There's only one place where the big boys play, and that is in my extra queen-size bed. Well, it just happens. What can you do?
Let's talk the things.
I think they might shock wall.
Is that the Shockmaster's wall?
Yeah, I like Big Dick myself. I was just curious. PTB Nation, let me know what
Here's
you're
our
doing.
opener.
To do worse than Josh Richard.
Clearly I remember picking on the boy. Seemed a harmless little fun. But we unleashed the lion.
Place to Be Nation. Welcome back to the great episode of the one and only Place to Be Podcast. I am your co-host, Justin Rosero, coming at you live on this Wednesday evening. And Scott Criscolo, on Monday, I was at about a 9.5 on the Brian Pillman voice scale. Right now, I'm about a 3, so I'm getting better. Thankfully, we didn't do a show earlier in the week because I was not sounding healthy, and we'll get into all the reasons why later this week. We'll talk about that later tonight when we wrap up. We'll talk about what's still to come here this week.
Mm-hmm.
So welcome in. It is a Vintage Vault night. We have a very special guest with us.
Yes, we do. Good to see you, JR, and talk to you. I'm glad you're feeling better. We'll explain why you had to feel better at the end of the week. It is episode 289 of the Place to Be podcast. And, well, you know what? It was an honor and a privilege to do a couple of casts with Will from Goodwill Wrestling and Wrestling.
Yeah, I feel like you've been around the horn. You've been doing the media tour since we did our last show.
I know.
We did Invasion, and then we've had
I'm like Carl Rove. I'm like on all these networks.
We did the Kevin Kelly show, but then you were doing main events. You've done Goodwill Wrestling with the Past, the PTB Network. What else? The Titans of Wrestling, where the big. You've done them all.
I've been on. I gotta go on with. I gotta go on with Nate and the guys one night. I think you and I have to go on one night. So, but you were talking about the Pillman scale. Johnny Sorrow from. He's like a 58 on the Pillman voice scale. So him and Will make up for him and Will are like Pillman tag team. They're pretty awesome. But it was great. It was fun to be with them on Sunday night talking the Rumble, and with Will on Thursday night.
It's weird hearing you reference another Johnny besides Reckless, the mysterious one.
The mysterious one. Well, I talked to him this week, and you
said the same thing in episode 3, 4, 5,
no,
6,
1
7,
actually.
8,
it was episode 1. But we talked about what was a very controversial. And by the way, we have nothing to talk about next week on the main event. I think we're going to compare recipes with what. Next week's going to be but we'll talk more about that later.
Yeah.
Tonight, it is episode 289 of the Place to Be podcast. And, God, we haven't opened the door. My buddy Steven Sutton, loyal PTB listener from across the pond, he always checks the
Well, let me do this, though. Let him check it, Scott, before you check it. Let's run through what everyone may have missed on PlaceToBeNation.com.
Yes, of course.
And then we'll bring our guest in, then we can dive into the vault. So we had a lot to get through here. We'll get through it as quickly as we can. Dallas Buyers Club. Derek Cornett did a review of that Oscar-nominated film. We have a couple editions of the new hotness from Russell Sellers last week and this week. Of course, he looks at the comic books you should have on your list each and every week, and he talks on January 22nd, and again today, January 29th, he did a list as well. Ben Morse put together his all-time January pay-per-view card. Him and Chad kind of compared against me and you, Scott, the one we did on air. Of course, we have 2 editions of all our reviews since we last went. 2 of my Ring of Honors. We had a couple of your Raws. We got Matt Petticord SmackDown, Dan McGinn's Main Event, Ryan Everett's Superstars. Nate Milton debuted with his Impact review, and he does it really in depth. He's a guy that's been a big TNA fan. You've heard him on here before. Has been a big TNA fan for a long time, and Nate not only just reviews the matches, but also kind of gives his take and analyzes where the competitors of each match are heading, and it's a really in-depth look at Impact, and he's going to be doing that each and every week here. PlayStation.com. We got the Godfather in the house. A couple editions of Glenn Butler's Wednesday Walk Around the Web. If you're looking to kill some time, some interesting links, some mind benders, check that out. He has a whole compilation of great links to click through and read when you're trying to kill some time at work or on a plane or at the airport or wherever you are. Trying to fall asleep while someone's snoring, anything. Steve Rogers, I should just mention now, of course, we had tons of Royal Rumble content. We're going to be talking about some of that here. Steve Rogers did an evaluation of all the Royal Rumble winners, what the win meant to them, where it took them, and the quality of their win. Our staff had the other 5 count, a non-wrestling edition. We looked at the greatest TV dads, of course, in honor of James Avery, Uncle Phil, who passed away earlier this month. We went through and ranked our favorite TV fathers. Of course, Scott Keith had a couple editions of his NXT review that you might have missed. Andrew Reich and Derek Cornett did an Academy Awards nominations recap and early predictions. Of course, those nominations came out last week, and we'll have a lot of Oscar coverage as we head towards the awards season here. We had our regular 5 count, the wrestling one, and that is the top Royal Rumble performers. That was a lot of fun, too. A lot of chalk there, but a lot of good ones to read through. A new edition of Grapple Talk, and of course, as I mentioned, the Kevin Kelly Show, Episode 1. We interviewed Adam Cole. We looked at Daniel Bryan, the WWE Network, my hero, Tanaka, of course, Scott from the Yankees, Hulk Hogan returning to the WWE, and much more. And that's, of course, Kevin Kelly runs that show, and I'm in there as his producer. We also had the debut episode of The Main Event. If you like roundtables and you like Scott, you'll love this show. He had Andrew Reich, Scott Willie, Steve Willie, Jordan Duncan, and Ben Steve Morse. There's too many names. I spent the whole week on Steve Willie. You think I know his name. And, of course, you guys talked about the final Raw before the Rumble. You did your Rumble preview and predictions, and it's a lot of fun. And that'll be every other Wednesday here on PlayStationNation.com. PTBN's main events. Records on Wednesday. Usually it'll be up on Thursday. Had a couple of new episodes of The Kings of Sport. Of course, with Nate again. We had your full Royal Rumble preview. We had the Hard Traveling Fanboys with the rundown, January 2014, looking at the best comics from this past month. Steve Willie and Glenn Butler brought to you the High Spot, looking at a preview of Ring of Honor's Pittsburgh show, Wrestling Finest. They looked at Daniel Bryan and the other big top stories of the week. Stephen Graham with a very controversial and well-written and really interesting piece, ranking his top 25 matches in Royal Rumble history. This thing brought about a lot of debate, a lot of anger in some circles, but it was all good discussion, and Steven did a great job with that piece, so check it out, please, over at PlayStationNation.com, as I mentioned. So we also had a new episode of Answering the 10 Count. We also had the Royal Rumble Live blog, led by you, Dan McGlynn, and Ben Morse. House of Horror with Jeremy Nichols, looking at Day of the Dead from 1985. Todd Gessling had your NBA Weekly Roundup last week. Looked at the lukewarm Miami Heat, who tonight are facing off with the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Yes.
Scott Keith has his rant on Royal Rumble 2014, tons of Rumble coverage. And, of course, the Place to Be Network podcast with you, Will, and Johnny Sorrow, breaking down the Rumble. That night, you guys did it. We had it up the next day. And, Scott, and you can confirm this for me right here on air, right? That's going to be a monthly occurrence?
Yes, Will is very pumped about that. He wants to do it every night after a pay-per-view. He wants to get a little roundtable and do a nice, quick turnaround recap, which I think would be awesome.
Yep.
That way Monday morning people can listen to what the experts had to say about that night's pay-per-view. So
and you guys, too.
That.
So that's great.
Yeah, and a bunch of other guys, too, yeah. Me and the experts.
Yeah. Chrissy Ryan made her debut. Going to be doing some pop culture stuff for us. Talks about why this season of American Idol is the best yet in her mind.
Wow.
I can't say because I've never seen any of them, but Chrissy did a great job convincing me. So check that out, and she'll be back routinely with pop culture pieces. Stephen Graham remixed the Grammys. Went through and talked about who should have won all the awards and why and whatnots. And Scott, a piece near and dear to my heart. We missed the 90s, the 1994 Royal Rumble, and turned into an ode to the friendship of myself and Josh Richer.
Yes.
We did it in the email back and forth style, and we talk about going to that show live. We talk about what it meant to us as wrestling fans and friends, and kind of where our friendship went from there and where it is today. So it's a long piece, but I think it was a worthwhile read, and I know you enjoyed it as well.
No, it was a blast. It was one of my favorite things you've ever written on the show, on the website. Even if you don't know a lot of the references, I think you'll really enjoy it. So I highly recommend reading it. You'll get an interesting perspective on a long friendship out of it. So highly recommend it.
Wrestling with the Past, episode 10. Another Scott bouncing around with Dylan from Wrestling Culture, which you can find here on PlayStation.com as well. And Will, once again, the three of you talked Triple H. I hope you get it out of your system. 3 hours of Triple H talk. I hope you get it all out of your system.
Yep, I did.
So check that out. That's on the front page right now, as is Glenn Butler's Wednesday walk around the web, as we mentioned before. And Maurice Pogue with his backloggery beatdown, looking at the new Super Mario Brothers Wii U game. And Chad Campbell previewed Edge versus Lance Storm from tonight's SummerSlam 01 card. So you can check that out as you're getting ready to listen to us talk about it. And finally, a new episode of Titans of Wrestling, the Unspecial. Kelly jumps in the host seat with the usual crew, and they look at some maybe 1-star matches is the best way to put it. So, And Scott, we have a guy very well known for his star ratings.
Absolutely.
And we're going to bring him on the line right now. And of course, that man is the man behind RSPWFAQ.com. The neck cop, the Smark himself, our good friend and writer at PlayStation.com, Mr. Scott Keith. Scott, welcome back.
Good evening, guys. How's it going?
Good evening, Scott. It's good to have you on.
Thank you.
Doing well, and it's funny, we went like 3 years without ever having you on, and now it feels like you're on every other week.
I know, I'm sick of you guys too, but...
Oh, I didn't say that. I'm excited.
Okay.
Come on.
Okay.
And this time's interesting. The first time you came on, we kind of went through your bio, and then the next time you came on, we fought with Will, and now this time... we are having you on for a Vintage Vault, which is really cool. We're looking forward to this one. This is a time period where you had a little bit of backstage connection, and also really probably one of the main historians of the time period in 01. A lot of guys had kind of fallen off at that point, and you were one of the ones that survived, and were thriving at this period. So I feel like it's a good show to have you on for. You agree?
Yeah, no, it was definitely the last kind of big renaissance of wrestling in 2000, 2001, and I was certainly enjoying it at the time, and didn't know how badly it would fail.
Very true, and we'll get through some of that here tonight, and we'll talk about some of the good stuff that happened as well. So, Scott, why don't you finally pry that door open?
Okay. Been a while.
Hey, what is going on here?
At least throw out the nacho cheese. Good God, man. Oof. Keith, do you have any fine-smelling Great White North pine tree air fresheners or something? Wow.
I got some Lysol wipes, but I don't know.
Yeah, let's wipe him down. Good God. Wow.
That could be your job, Scott.
Oh.
No, we'll give it to our buddy Steve Sutton. All right. Tonight, inside the Vintage Vault, we are in the eye of the storm of the invasion and the war between the World Wrestling Federation and the Alliance as we bring you SummerSlam 2001. I would call this one of the more highly anticipated pay-per-views in a while, probably because of the mix of roster guys and guys making their debuts, guys making single debuts, new belts being thrown in the mix. Keith, what did you think? Were you, in terms of anticipating a show like this with all these other belts being thrown in the mix and all these different guys, what were your thoughts heading into the show, just that alone?
Oh, it was a very cool feeling, for sure. It was like all the dream matches that we have been anticipating for years and years, and then all of a sudden just throwing out this whole pay-per-view with WCW against WWF guys, and kind of crazy, actually.
Yeah, it was definitely pretty nuts. JR, what were you thinking? Like, I mean, obviously we knew we were in the throes of it, but now, I mean, it was in print. We had titles. I mean, who would have thought we'd ever see the big gold belt on camera? I mean, it was pretty nuts, right?
And plus, the good thing, besides really Austin and one other guy we'll get to in a minute, we still have very defined lines between who was with who. Like, we didn't have a lot of jumping yet or guys that didn't make sense. So it really still felt like an invasion and like a war because the lines were still pretty divided. Mm-hmm. As we move towards the fall and guys start jumping back and forth and the sides get watered down more, it starts to lose that feel. But I think here we still had a lot of that kind of WCW, ECW side and WWF side, and it felt very delineated.
Yeah, it was really fresh too. I thought actually it wasn't yet to the point where it's Survivor Series where you were just sick of it and wanting to get it over with. I mean, there was a lot of feeling that certain guys still could have a chance to kind of get over and revolutionize things, I think.
Yeah, and it felt like a lot of fresh matchups, to your point there, too. It was a lot of guys that hadn't fought before and a lot of potential matchups still in the hopper. So I think that's a good point.
Yeah, and I think obviously we'll discuss tonight whether or not the right guys went over, were the match results correct. I had a couple different theories as I rewatched the show today, maybe a little rebooking, that might have kept the war going in a different direction. But let's hop in. August 19th, 2001, live from the Compaq Center, a.k.a. the Shark Tank in San Jose, California. And JR, I believe this is, no, we've been here already. The last time we were here was, I believe, the 98 Rumble. I don't think we've been in this building since.
Was that San Jose, the 98 Rumble?
Yeah, right, wasn't it?
Pretty
Keith,
sure
right?
it was, yeah. I'm pretty sure it was, yeah.
Yep.
Yes, you're right. Yep.
Yep, so we have been here, so we don't have to go over the history of the building. It's not a fairly new building anyway. Your attendance, pretty solid, 15,293. The buy rate, 1.05. Pretty good one. And your announcers, the split table of WWF announcer, good old JR Jim Ross, and Alliance announcer, Paul Heyman.
That got too, because that Invasion, when you were stuck with JR and Cole, really kind of took away a little bit, I thought, from the show. And now Heyman back here. We have the camaraderie and the chemistry they had earlier in the year, and now we have a little more divisiveness because, of course, they're on split sides. And I thought it was a really good move to get Heyman back in the booth and do the whole, we want equal representation thing, because it just made more sense. He was a third in command anyway behind Shane and Stephanie, so it's not like he was getting a lot of lead promo time as the face of the alliance. So being in the booth was the best fit for him. Keith, did it bug you at Invasion when we had Cole in there, and were you happy to see Heyman back?
It always bugs me when Cole was on commentary around this time. So yes, it was extremely nice to have Paul Heyman back in that capacity again.
Yeah. Scott, I also like too the theme song here. I thought was a good fit. Of course, it's a song that'll become synonymous with this era because it becomes the theme of the Alliance itself. But "Let the Bodies Hit the Floor" I thought was pretty fitting for this. This is went from a very jovial time period to a lot of angst and anger and hatred in a very quick swoop. In the summer of 2001. We had all the kind of goofiness with Angle and Austin being buddies, and we didn't get to talk a lot about that because they didn't really cross paths until now, so we can mention it later. But all of a sudden, things turned quickly with the Invasion. Now everyone's all angry and hates each other, and I thought the song was a pretty good depiction. It was big at the time, so they were pretty dead on with the song.
Yeah, and if you weren't the biggest Drowning Pool fan, then you probably were miserable these 7, 8 months because they seem to be on constantly.
Yeah.
Lead singer seemed to look like a very young Husky Harris. I just noticed that when I was watching the Open today. I was like, wow, he looks like Rotundo's kid. All right. We had one Sunday Night Heat match, JR. It was the ladies. Why don't you tell us what that match was?
Ms. Jacqueline, Molly Holly, and Lita defeated Stacy Keibler, Tori Wilson, and Ivory from the Alliance side. Ivory had jumped over. Nothing here, just kind of paint by numbers thing to get the crowd going.
Yeah. What did you think of the cachet of women coming from WCW, Keith? You think did they kind of freshen things up a little bit? I always thought they were a different look. They were all very, very pretty.
Different look, all right.
They were a different look, all right, but they just seemed like different than the WWF girls. I don't know why. What were your thoughts on Keibler and Tori and the new influx of women from WCW?
Well, basically, Stacy Keibler justified any money that they threw at any of the women at WCW by herself. Yes. And actually, I guess Tori Wilson, too.
Yeah, Tori, too. She was just...
Yeah.
Yeah, really, you got those two, and it's like anything else is just cake, really.
Yeah. He certainly does not. He certainly does not fit in the class of Stacy Keibler and Tori Wilson. She might have been a cheerleader for a Baltimore football team, but she certainly looked better than the guy that played for him. So
I'll say not the team he was on.
No. Okay. Obviously, a myriad of title matches on this show because there's gold all over the place. And me being a belt junkie, I have a few questions I'm looking forward to asking you, Keith, about the difference between WWF belts and WCW belts. But let's start our opener, and it is a title match. The World Wrestling Federation Intercontinental title on the line. Your champion, one of our favorites here at Place to Be Nation, a guy we talked about a little bit and gave his bio on the last show, and that is Lance Storm is your Intercontinental champion. And obviously that must have been a change. What happened, JR? How did he get the belt?
Well, as we talked about last time, Albert had defeated Kane in a surprisingly good match to win the Intercontinental title before Invasion. And then shortly after that show, actually I think it was the next night, in Buffalo, with some help from Hugh Morris, Lance Storm became the Intercontinental champion, defeating Albert. And I thought this was a really good move. Keith, I wanted your take on that Albert-Kane match. And then did you like the move to get the belt on Storm as well?
Yeah, I mean, like you had to get one of the major titles on the WCW guys right away to establish them as a threat. But that Kane Albert match, that was a hell of a match, I got to say. I don't think either one of them has really ever touched it since then, as far as two guys in that power wrestling thing going out there and just surprising everybody with how great of a match that they could have, in fact.
Yeah, the Albert thing was weird because he had not had, that was like a complete eye-opener because Kane, you could maybe kind of see it a little bit in him somewhere, but Albert, that was like, holy shit, where did that come from? And I agree, you had to get one of the belts on Storm, and Storm was a good fit because he had held so many of the titles in the dying days of WCW. So he was a logical person, I thought, to get the second biggest title. Well, I guess third now, technically, in the promotion on him.
Yeah, and his opponent is a guy that's slowly moving up the ranks. He won the King of the Ring. And Keith, being a hockey fan like we are, I wanted to ask you, how cool was it that the King of the Ring trophy looked like a mini Stanley Cup? I always thought that was really cool.
I don't know if it was intentional or not, but yeah, that was pretty cool.
I know. They probably had no idea.
They probably
But, of course, talking about Edge, and they've gone some back and forth. Of course, Lance Storm did win the IC title. And then on August 9th, Lance Storm cost Edge a hardcore title shot with fellow Alliance member Rob Van Dam. That really kicked the feud into high gear. I love this match. I think this was the perfect pick for an opener. Of course, Lance Storm did his awesome "If I Could Be Serious for a Minute" promo to start, talking about crazy shenanigans.
Offbeat shenanigans.
Offbeat shenanigans. Come on.
What a great line. Only one guy could fire off the word shenanigans, and it would be like marking, and you could mark out for it. So, great promo to open. And this match is really good. I mean, obviously, maybe from a technical viewpoint, Lance Storm probably slightly better wrestler at this time than Edge was. But I thought they meshed very well together. I thought Edge kept up. I love the flow of the match. I remember liking it a lot back then, and I loved it even more watching it today. JR, what'd you think of the chemistry between these two? I thought the match flowed really well.
Yeah, I thought the chemistry was the biggest part of it. I thought it definitely showed, and I thought having Storm in there with Edge was shrewd too, because Edge's still kind of breaking out. I mean, he had that early singles run, and then has pretty much been a tag player for a while now. And Keith, this is my question to you in a minute. That this was really the first big spot for Edge as a singles guy. And I think he delivers, and I think Storm helped walk him through it. And I thought Storm looked great here. So he's been on an awesome run. He had a really fantastic final stretch of ECW, and was one of the MVPs in WCW in their final days, and now has carried that over here just in a real groove. And I thought it was a good move to have Edge win the title, but I was sad to see it come off Storm so quickly. Like, I feel like maybe as great as this was for an opener as a choice, this is one where maybe we could have had a screwy ending and then have the rematch in September and have Edge win there to kind of chase a little bit longer. I just thought Storm was so good in that role. I hated to see them take the belt off him so quickly, knowing that he may not get there. I mean, you had hope at the time that he'd get back there, but you weren't sure. Keith, what did you think of this being Edge's first big spot?
Yeah, it was really a weird period for Edge as far as that goes, because he really was kind of that in-between thing where he was trying to find what he was as a wrestler between, tag team guy whose finishing move was hitting a guy in the head with a belt, and moving on to a singles guy who never really did develop that big kind of trademark signature spot or finishing move or anything like that. Like later on, I know I would always rail against him. You can give him a hard time and in reviews and that kind of stuff, saying he should wrestle more like a big man, which is kind of exactly what he ended up doing, going out and doing the big power spots rather than trying to stick with the same kind of things he was doing with Christian, the kind of quasi cruiserweight,
right,
technical type of thing, right? So
yeah,
I thought it was a good step towards that direction. I mean, obviously he wouldn't really break through until the next year with Kurt Angle thing, but I think he acquitted himself well here. Held up with Storm really well. Match flowed well. Rewatching it, I don't know. I didn't like it quite as much as I did. I gave it 4 stars initially. I think I'm down around 3.25 or so, but I don't know if that's just rose-colored glasses at the time, watching the Canadians go out there and open up the show with a hot match or something. But because I've been known to have a little bit of bias towards that, I suppose you could
just a scotch.
Just a scooch. But yeah, Lance Storm was in a really good place too. I was really impressed with the stuff that he was going out there and doing in WCW, especially with all the crap around him at the time.
Yeah, he really was.
2000, right? Yeah, and he deserved a shot to show what he can do in WWF, and unfortunately, I don't think they ever really capitalized on it, and they kind of made him talk more than he should have, and he was kind of the guy you really should let him do a quick promo and then stick him out there and have an announcer or manager do all the talking for him. But But yeah, it was a good opener, I thought.
I enjoyed it too, and it's funny, Keith, how you said your greatest kind of drop, because I felt the same way a little bit. Chad Campbell reviewed it today as a preview to this. He does it every show, and he gave it 2.5. He thought Edge looked a little bit, a little out of sorts, and not as smooth and in sync as Storm was, and that was kind of one of his issues with it. I'm not going to read through this whole review. I'll let you guys go visit the site and talk about it, and you can bitch at him on Facebook. But, I like it as an opener. I thought the pop was good. The crowd was into it. And also one piece we got to mention is the Christian, kind of hint at his turn. They've been teasing it now for a couple months, really, dissension between the two. And he comes out here, accidentally spears Edge, and you think that's the finish. Storm gets a near fall, Edge kicks out, and then gets the win. And then backstage, Grandma Edna calls, and she doesn't want to talk to Christian, wants to talk to Edge. And, of course, Christian was all excited because he had was it European title match the next night?
Yeah, he was. Right. He got a European title match with Matt Hardy while Matt was standing right there. So that was even more awkward. But the other fun part of that, too, JR, is after Edge got the pin, Edge was like leaning on the ropes, kind of, obviously winded, and Christian grabbed the IC belt and was kind of standing there and doing that kind of holding the belt like you're about to, and then he turns around and just gives it to him. So they even were teasing the faint possibility of a turn there, and then it didn't happen. But
right.
The other good thing you thought about while you're watching this match and the matches to come throughout the rest of this storyline is obviously Vince and the backstage guys were trying, I don't say try out, but they were, making sure, all right, well, once this storyline ends, who of these guys do we really want to keep? And obviously Lance Storm was one of them, and obviously he passed with flying colors. But he did lose the match. This wasn't a match I had a problem with Storm losing. There's some other matches that we'll talk about later that I think maybe could have been rebooked and could have adjusted the show a little bit to keep giving the side some teeth. This one I didn't have a problem with Storm losing. What do you think, Keith? Did you mind Storm losing here? Or?
No, I like both guys, so it didn't really matter to me as far as that goes.
Okay.
I was just sad to see the belt come off Storm. That's all. Go ahead, Keith. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I wasn't confident. Yeah, like it's just I like both guys. I wanted Edge to get the push. It's it was a good way to make the crowd happy to start out with things like that. So yeah, I had no beef with either guy winning. I didn't want to see Edge and Christian though. I got to say was one of the feuds where it was. I like both guys, and it's like people just don't want to see them matched up against each other when they split, right? So that was the one thing that I didn't like, because it's just family members feuding, even though it's never really been established whether or not they actually are family members. But you know what I mean.
Cousins, aunt, uncle. It's hard to tell what they are.
Good friends. I don't even know anymore.
So there you go. We are down the first match, and the WWF strikes first as Edge wins the World Wrestling Federation Intercontinental Championship for a second time, and we hope that this reign lasts longer than the first one, which was only 24 hours. If you remember, he, of course, won it at a house show in Toronto in July of 99, and then promptly lost it back the next night at Fully Loaded to Jeff Jarrett. So hopefully this was a more substantial reign coming up. All right, next up, we have a six-man tag. And I kind of dug this little interior storyline going on. It was the Dudley Boys, not the Dudley Boys, I'm sorry. It was the Dudley Boys for the Alliance and Test taking on the APA and Spike. Test was one of these enigmas. He was a heel, but he's kind of a back and forth, but he was in the WWF, but he wasn't getting treated like he was in the WWF. JR, give us a little background on what was happening with Test.
On the 8-9 SmackDown, he officially turned and went to the Alliance. He interfered in the Acolytes tag team title match, causing him to lose the titles to Kanyon and DDP. He was upset that many wrestlers thought he was the rumored mole for the Alliance, and he was beaten down over it. And it turned out he wasn't a mole, but the lack of loyalty left a bad taste in his mouth, and decided to join up with his longtime friend Shane McMahon. That was a whole angle going on that they thought there was a mole, and they kept jumping guys backstage, and they had this brigade of assholes led by the APA and Haku that were beating people up. And the testing made sense to me because him and Shane have always really been buddies in the storylines, and that's one of the things I always enjoyed about them. Dating back to when they became friendly after SummerSlam 99, they've always kind of gone back to each other. And I thought that was kind of neat. Like, they did it with him helping Shane against Big Show a couple of times, and he even helped him early on here earlier this year before the alliance thing kicked in when Shane had been revealed to be the owner of WCW. So I thought it made sense. It was good continuity with the two of them being buddies.
Yeah, what'd you think of that, Keith?
Well, they really, really, really wanted Test to get over. I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Like they were bending over backwards, doing a lot of stuff to get this guy over in any way possible by associating with Shane or making him a badass or whatever it took. So God bless him, I guess. He does meet the 3 criteria to be a top level superstar. He's tall, he's muscular, and he has a full head of hair. So there you go.
He's got it all.
He's blonde.
He's got it all.
And he was eventually willing to cut that hair when that became the trend.
Oh, that hurt me so much, man. That was it's like, why would you ever do that? Like that's the one thing you had going for you was the awesome hair, and they just went out and cut it. Stacy Keibler, women, I tell you.
He was clearly designed to be the standout here. I mean, he gets the most shine, most face time in this match. And it was a good match to push the hatred between the two sides. It was, the Dudleys and APA sold that well. And, of course, Spike went against his brothers and stayed with the WWF to stay with his girlfriend, Molly Holly. So there was some animosity there. And Test was so pissed. And there was a lot of good anger and hatred in this match. The one thing I didn't really care for, I didn't think they needed the Shane run-in. I'd rather have just seen Test get the win. If you're going to push him. Let him pin. I mean, Spike and Farouk or Bradshaw, any of those guys can eat a pin and cleanly and be fine with it. So I don't get why they even bothered having Shane get involved here.
I was kind of perplexed by that as well. The match was okay, but I did like the interior storyline with Test and kind of being a mole. At least they were able to kind of expand this invasion storyline and branch it out into different things to give guys different opportunities. But yeah, Test was a guy he was in that mold, and they really were definitely trying to push him. And it happened here. Shane interferes, and Test gets the pin. So Test and the Dudleys get the win, and now the score is, I don't know if they were keeping official tabs, but it was 1-1 after.
At the end of the night, JR kind of says what the record is before the main event, and that they'll play it up towards the end. They don't really do it match by match like they did at Invasion. Because at this point, I don't think they cared. Like, it wasn't about winning best of whatever as who won the biggest matches, and at the end of the day, who came out ahead physically, I guess, more than anything. This is a layup win for WCW, though, when you look at who's on Team WWF in this one.
Yeah, absolutely. So the technically the score is 1-1. All right, next up, well, after this, we have the backstage celebration for Edge, and then Christian announces right in front of their friend Matt Hardy that he has a European title match against Matt the next night on Raw. And then, of course, Aunt Edna calls in, and
Grandma Edna.
Aunt Edna. She's tied on the roof of the family truckster. No, Grandma Edna calls and doesn't want to talk to Christian and only wants to talk to Edge. So that worked out. All right, next up, we have our first of what will be a few over the next few months, unification title matches, as we will combine the WCW Cruiserweight Championship and the World Wrestling Federation Light Heavyweight Championship. Your Cruiserweight Champion...
You don't know how you met me, you don't know why you can't turn around and say goodbye. All you know is when I'm with you, I make you free and swim through your veins like a fish in the sea. I'm singing,
I'm gonna unify both of those belts. I got the stroke to get it done, and I don't care what Scott Keith thinks in his rant. I am the motherfucking man.
We only here on the Place to Be podcast will we find an Uncle Cracker entrance theme.
Yes.
I think I should have specified in my contract no Uncle Cracker. But too late now, I guess.
You gotta play ball, Keith.
I guess so.
Of course, we're talking about X-Pac. He won the light heavy, the Cruiserweight Championship by defeating Billy Kidman on the 7:30 Raw from Philadelphia. Because 1 week earlier, he lost the WWF Light Heavyweight title.
God forbid.
Yeah, I know. Oh my God. To his opponent tonight. And that is, of course, Tajiri.
Yes.
This was an okay match and a pretty, in my opinion, pretty stupid result.
Oh, hang on. Before we get into that, I wanted to ask Keith, because we were talking about this a lot on the show.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you were talking about it at the time, and as was CRZ. What was your belief, and maybe this is the first time we kind of delve into your email bin with some of the writer you were friends with at the time, but was there truth to the fact that X-Pac would always seem to lose on pay-per-view and win the next night on TV, or lose the first match but be sure to win the feud? Because it seemed to happen a lot during the stretch.
Yeah, that did seem to be the pattern, because he's some kind of evil genius, I think, is what I can discern from everything going on there. But yeah, that was definitely the pattern. Like he would lose the one match to set up the rematch where he could come back and win the feud, and it always ended up being him on top and all of his buddies on all the time. It was that was definitely a thing.
And it sucks to come at the hands of Tajiri too, who's a guy who's really been one of the MVPs of the year so far.
Well, yeah, Tajiri should have gotten over like crazy from the whole thing. I mean, the size thing obviously being held up against him a little bit, but if he'd been able to talk at all, it could have been almost a Daniel Bryan situation, I think, with him, where he could have kind of gotten over on sheer willpower.
Right, and the crazy thing is, he really did get himself over. When you look at the push and how he was used and the level he was over to, and I think you're right, if he could have that one extra connection. But it's amazing what is, in a way, is almost more impressive than a guy like Daniel Bryan or someone who can talk, because he had such a great chemistry. There's guys we look at that never, didn't talk, like Kane, right? Had good chemistry and good facials, and for a guy that didn't speak, I think Tajiri was along those lines as well. I mean, he spoke Japanese, but he didn't really connect verbally with the U.S. audiences, but he had this innate charisma and connection with the fans that was just palpable. You could see it, and the crowd would pop when he'd look at them. He had that good, quick, like head snap kind of motions to look out at the crowd when he wanted to do a move. And if you mix the mist in with that and a cool move like the tarantula, which we haven't really seen before in WWF TV, and he had all the mix, all the fixins, I guess, for to at least an upper mid card star with what they were looking for. And they do use him. If there's any time period that they used him well, it was here. Like, I don't think he could have gotten over as much as he did here in any other year. This was a time where they were kind of willing to let guys like him have a run, and I thought they did pretty well in the summer and stuck with him a lot longer than you'd expect.
Yeah, but it's like he's ripping off the Great Muta, and it's like Great Muta gets over everywhere he goes in the world, and if you can't get that over, then you're not even trying. On WWF's part, that's what's so frustrating about it. It's like this guy should have come in, and he's doing all this stuff that should have been made him a top level guy, like almost instantly, with the kicks and like saying and the facials and the evil mist and everything like that, and they didn't know how to do it, and it's like it's crazy. Every other wrestling promotion in the world knew what to do with that.
Did you like keeping him with the WWF, or do you think he should have went to the Alliance?
Oh no, he's fine with WWF. I mean, as a like the underdog badass babyface, that's totally fine.
Yeah, I like that whole scene. It was at the Raw. I was at Providence when everyone thought he was going to the Alliance, and he ripped the shirt off, and he had the WWF shirt, and him and Regal hugged, and it was just a cool moment because him and Regal had that weird kind of relationship. And you could tell he had grown on him, and then he thought he was going to turn, and that was really cool. And I thought that was the moment where, holy shit, this guy may be a star, because the crowd just went crazy when he ripped that shirt off and he had the WWF shirt on. Also interesting here, Scott, is the all WWF match, because Pac is a clear heel without needing to be in the Alliance, so it's kind of interesting that X-Pac could be in the only straight all WWF star match and not Alliance tainted.
Yeah, I know. Definitely the wrong decision here. This was a guy clearly trying to hang on to his spot.
Yeah.
So using as much stroke as he possibly could, using as much Uncle Cracker as he can to smoking the Uncle Cracker, obviously, to get as much as he can. So definitely not the right move here.
Well, I liked the idea of the rematch though, because I thought they had a decent match in Invasion, and they kind of gave him a chance to improve on the chemistry, and it made sense to have them. Condense the titles. It just didn't make sense for X-Pac to win on any level.
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, I agree with you there. And, the story throughout this was that the Alliance may try and steal X-Pac away and get that title under their auspices, and Heyman kept hinting at it, that they were impressed by him and everything else. And Tajiri just really hot in this. So it was a weird decision not to have Tajiri win, but, based on the politics we talked about earlier, not really a shock.
No, not at all. So X-Pac has consolidated the light heavyweight championship and the cruiserweight championship. So there you go. All right. Next up, we have a match without a belt, but definitely a linchpin feud of this show. And you mentioned, of course, earlier, Keith, about Daniel Bryan, a very polarized, well, not really polarizing, but a very hot button competitor in WWE at the moment. There's a bunch of Daniel Bryans on this show. We just talked about Tajiri. Here's another one. Talking, of course, about Chris Jericho, who everyone thinks is ready to take, thought was ready to take that next step. And that's pretty much what they were doing backstage during the whole time. Here, he was taking on another ECW alum and Alliance member, and that being former Hardcore Champion Rhino. And this, of course, was the make fun of Stephanie McMahon's, shall we say, enhancements and other things. I thought the feud was not bad. The match I thought was really good.
Well, there was a little to the, well, as you mentioned, it was the whole, Jericho. They kind of reignited that feud from 2000 with him taking the shots at Stephanie, and of course with the enhancements that made it easy pickings for him. So Rhino was kind of handpicked as her new revenge machine. The $1 Billion Princess, of course, was the nickname at the time. And it was I thought it was a good mashup because you had Jericho, who was really at the height of his comedy stuff and kind of being real goofy, and Rhino, just a serious, intense beast that wasn't impressed by any of it, was just looking to kill the guy. So I liked it here, and they kept interfering in each other's matches and battling, and the big blow came when Rhino actually gored Jericho through the Ovaltron on SmackDown, and that would be the final appearance of the classic set, and the next week the fist design that lived on for a while would be introduced. So I always like when they're going to get rid of a set when they actually do something to get rid of it, and that was kind of cool that they had him gore him through it. Keith, what were your thoughts on Rhino at this point? A guy that really impressed me when he came in. I was impressed by his energy, and someone who really looked to be working hard to take advantage of the opportunity he was given.
He was working hard. I thought he was very, very limited in what he can do. Like the Jericho match, I think was kind of his ceiling in terms of what he can do in a straight singles match, and he was okay. I was never a huge fan of his in ECW or anything like that, and we got a lot of him because he was Paul Heyman's guy and everything. But other than that, I don't think he would have gotten much of a shot.
Yeah, I mean, probably not. But I mean, he's a guy who was pretty hot early on in the year and had the pretty good match with Raven. This match is not bad. I enjoyed it more now after I've watched it a couple more times. Very violent. Rhino puts everything into his moves. And Jericho eventually gets the win, putting on one of his better walls of Jericho. I guess the whole point of the walls is to not be totally bent over like a full Boston Crab. It's kind of like a half, and then he puts his knee into your back.
Yeah, that was the old Lion Tamer, and that was when it was at its best. I mean, I know it was tougher here than it was in WCW because a lot of the guys are taller. I mean, WCW was wrestling a lot of cruiserweights or midgets like Malenko, so it was easy for him to really wrench back. Here against guys like, Rhino's actually not even that tall, but some of the guys who's wrestling like The Rock, he's not going to be able to put that on him. Or guys who had been around longer and were more banged up like Austin, he's not going to take that move like he was used to doing in WCW. So I always hated when it became more of a Boston Crab versus more of a Lion Tamer. Keith, it's another thing you talked about a lot at the time, and you can see it in his work, but Jericho catching a lot of flack backstage and on the internet for being sloppy and a little bit stiff. Around this time, he was botching a lot of moves. He'd slip off the ropes a lot, potato guys, and there were rumors that he was wearing lifts to try and, improve his height.
I don't think those were rumors. Like, watching the match today, like he looks taller than he does these days when it comes out. Yeah, he's. I think he was definitely using his own enhancements.
Yes, he had to be.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it hurt him though. Like you could tell he was having trouble adjusting to things like that, and like the potatoing people was well known at the time and kind of holding him back. And I don't know. It wasn't. He didn't seem like he got like super motivated that year. And I don't know, maybe he felt guilty for putting Triple H out, but he seemed to go through a little bit of a down phase until he got repushed against The Rock, and that really lit a fire under his ass, I think.
Do you think it became a self-fulfilling prophecy with him? Like he kept hearing all this shit so much, and then it got all on his head, and he just got all fucked up, almost like a baseball player who makes a couple errors. He starts hearing about it, and then he gets the yips and can't get it out of his head, and he starts throwing the ball away constantly. It almost felt like that with Jericho. Like, he heard the whispering so much that it got in his head, and all of a sudden he lost that natural ability to just go out there and have a smooth match.
Well, I mean, look who he injured, right? In the big match. If you put Triple H on the shelf, and then obviously then, you're going to be the one with the backstage rep as being the guy who can't work or injures people or, whatever. It was just really, really bad happenstance is to having the wrong guy be in there and being the one getting hurt from him. Although I don't think Triple H held it against him any more than any of the other million things that Triple H holds against him. I think that actually ended up being one of the lesser reasons, as weird as it sounds.
Because if that was Kevin Nash, he'd have been out for 5 years and and blabbed it to everybody. So
should have been Kurt Angle. Kurt Angle tears his quad every morning. He gets up and does.
That's right.
Yeah, he would have been a much better choice, and then he could have kept wrestling.
Yes. So Chris Jericho gets the win, stays hot.
Now, let me ask you that, Scott. What did you think of that finish, though? Is this another one you would have redone? Because I thought Rhino could have. It's tough because Jericho, you don't want to start taking advantage of how bulletproof he was, and I guess to pay off the feud with Rhino goring him. But Rhino's a guy who, again, I feel like the Alliance this early in needed to stop being booked so 50-50 and needed to start kind of piling up more wins, and then you have the WWF rally together. Like, I thought between Invasion and now, they're too even out of the gate. Like, I thought the Alliance was tighter, smaller. They should have been kind of picking up some of these wins, especially in a match like this, where Rhino could have easily beaten Jericho. And even here, maybe you have Steph get involved and trip him up, and then Rhino hits the gore. I don't think anyone would have batted an eye, and I thought it would have made give Rhino even more momentum.
I think I think most of it was that they did have something obviously planned, as Keith mentioned, for Jericho in the next month and a half. You didn't want him looking too much like a loser.
That's true too.
So
yeah, if you think about,
I think they were looking. I don't disagree with your theory though. I think it would have been perfectly fine, but I think it was more the foresight that Jericho was more needed down the line to be. They needed to elevate him. So losing on the big stage was probably not the smartest thing to do. Maybe if they had this match at Invasion. Then maybe that would have been the case. But so Jericho gets the win. Not a great match, could have been better, but I like the ending, and he gets the win, another win for the WWF.
Because I'm bizarre.
Would he have been in the Alliance? No. No.
I don't think even he knew where he was at this point.
All right. So next up.
Speaking of guys who sometimes don't know where they are.
Yeah, exactly. We have another guy that you could say, Keith, is in that Tajiri, Daniel Bryan type stratosphere, and that is Mr. Monday Night himself, Rob Van Dam, taking on, in a rematch from Invasion, taking on the World Wrestling Federation Hardcore Champion, and that is Mr. Jeff Hardy. However, this is a ladder match. And for the first time ever, the hardcore title was elevated above the ring. And no surprise that they're going to put these two in this kind of match and really show off their ridiculous trying to kill themselves skills. At this point, Keith, what were you thinking about RVD? Was he the guy that needed to be the one for the future that was going to come out of this new crop of guys at this point?
Yeah, totally. Like They completely missed the boat on RVD, but I mean, that's that's been talked about over and over again. But my God, yeah, they should have. They should have. Was it? I guess it was No Mercy. A couple of months after this, that he should have gotten the title. Like he was the most over guy out of anybody in the Invasion. He was somebody different, somebody who wasn't kind of tainted with the 50-50 stuff from before that. Mm-hmm. He has a totally different style. People loved him. Like. That was another case again, like the Daniel Bryan fan upswelling thing, where they didn't end up being as vocal as the ones now are, but yeah, like you could tell this was somebody special, and sometimes different is good, and they should have just damned the torpedoes full steam ahead with him and just pushed him over everybody. I think
he didn't have the stank of WCW on him either, which is the WCW guys were still pretty over here, but the ECW guys were more over. So I thought that that really helped him as well, not having that stink on him. I thought him being an ECW guy even helped his case further.
Yeah, exactly. Like he didn't have the loserdom attached to him like the other guys did. Like ECW was still something of compared to WCW, it was still kind of an underground thing, right? So he was this cool new guy that only the cool people really knew about, and then it's kind of cool to cheer for him, and like I say, it's something totally different and unique than anybody else, and he didn't do like that WWF style that everybody else did, and I understand the arguments against him from the people backstage and everything like that, but at the same time, it's money is the important thing, not like the politics or the safety of the workers or anything like that, as trite as that might sound.
And two, he was so well protected in ECW.
Well, yeah, exactly.
It wasn't even just the underground part. He had, had that long streak, then he got injured and had the year off and came back. So yeah, there's a lot of positives, and I thought the Hardy feud was a must here. I thought that was in a way, it was a lower level dream match. Hardy was really starting to break out and had a great feel about him, I thought, at this point, and I thought having him and RVD together was a really shrewd move.
Yeah, it was good. It was a good feud for them. I thought it kind of gave the hardcore title more of an edge to it too. I think putting in there with like an important new guy who people knew was important, and made Jeff Hardy look like more of a star too at the same time. Yeah, it was good all around.
Now I remember when I watched these matches, obviously the first time around, and then I watched them again when we did the written reviews, JR. Mm-hmm. That I liked the Invasion match better, believe it or not.
Really?
I thought this match was good, and they had some great spots, but there were a couple misses. Remember the moment where Jeff, I don't know if this was, now I'm thinking it was kind of intentional, but maybe not after I was watching it today. The spot where Jeff is on the ladder about to grab the belt, and RVD kicks the ladder out, so Jeff's just kind of hanging there, and then RVD goes for the kick. Now I don't know if he was meant to hit the kick or not, but he totally misses. He totally whiffs on it, and then Jeff just falls. And then all of a sudden RVD just gets up and grabs the belt and wins the match. I don't know. I thought that was really, I don't know. There's something weird about that. Like, I don't know if RVD meant to, if he was calling an audible and just trying to kick him and missed just because he missed, or if it was a predetermined move and he missed it anyway. I don't know. I thought the flow of the match at Invasion was better, but not to say this match was very good. My opinion of it hasn't changed. I still think the match at Invasion is better. Not by a lot, but definitely better. If you compared the two, Keith, which one do you think is better?
The Invasion match. I like that one a lot. Actually, plus it was fresher too, right? Like at that point, it was RVD's first big thing, so he came out there and basically let it all hang out. And Jeff Hardy hadn't really had any kind of major singles showcase before that either, so you could tell both guys were out there trying really, really hard to get over on their own. And this one was a little bit more of the alliance storyline around it, which hurt it a little bit, I think. But yeah, I gotta say, years later, the whole hardcore ladder match thing, I'm finding them harder and harder to watch too, just because having all these guys turning out to have concussion problems later in life, and the headshots and that crazy stuff, and I don't know, they just as a genre overall, I'm kind of numb to it now. Like watching those kind of things, it just feels like the same stuff over and over to me, and it's not really pleasurable to watch anymore for those kind of ones.
I mean, it was a lot in a very condensed time period. And it didn't help, too, that they did a lot of it on TV. So it wasn't even just big spots on pay-per-views. They were having these kind of matches on TV as well, and that didn't help things. I think what made these pairings feel fresh was the RVD factor. Even if they were pretty much doing the same exact match, having RVD in it felt completely different.
Well, yeah, that's exactly what was so great about RVD, because it was the same ladder matches that they've been having. But yeah, it was a totally different guy in there. It's just like today, if you found somebody new, God knows where, from the Indies or whatever, and put him in there and pushed him like that, he'd probably get over the same way RVD did, because it's not the same person doing the same match over and over again.
And this may sound stupid, but I liked his original version of a song before he got the kind of glammed up one of a kind. I liked that original.
I thought that too today.
That like it really sounded rough, and like you said, Keith, it almost fit that underground image. It was like don da don don da don don. It was very low beat, and I thought it almost added to this image of this backlot weird brawler that came out of the bingo hall, come out and beat the shit out of people and fly around and didn't give a shit about anything. Like I thought it just really fit that feel, and it almost felt like a big time song in a way, the way the drums would hit and he'd come out. He really did feel like a star. Do you think Hardy came out as a star out of these matches?
I thought he came out more of one from the Undertaker one later, but yeah, I think definitely as a single star, it was a real good start for him. And it's like you could tell that they were serious about giving him that more of a push at that point. I think based on those ones.
Scott, did you think Hardy came out as more of a star?
I think it. I think he definitely showcased himself. I think this is where he kind of got ahead of Matt a little bit, even though Matt had a singles belt as well. As we mentioned earlier, he's the European champion. But Matt was very different. Matt was a different kind of wrestler than Jeff is. Jeff is very electric. Matt is very grounded and basic. And as good a wrestler as Matt is, he didn't have that cachet like Jeff did. And I think this was a good showcase for him. And then he just goes right back into the tag ranks. But like Keith said, 2002, you would see Jeff take a much more heightened role, although his personal life would get a little muddied.
Remember when we used to compare who had more titles, and now it's who has more mugshots? It's sad.
Yes, exactly.
It's sad that's where it's headed.
All right, so 5 matches in. I have to say, Keith, we've historically here on the Place to Be podcast, and it's no secret, we make fun of West Coast, not Canadian West Coast, but West Coast crowds. Most California wrestling crowds are a little laid back, a little aloof. I have to say, 5 matches in, this San Jose crowd is scorching. They were into pretty much everything so far. One of the best California crowds in a while.
Oh yeah, I think actually the whole invasion thing had a lot to do with it too. It was just it was such a hot angle. I think that it kind of boosted everything around it because it was the dream matches, right?
Yeah, JR, did you think that? I mean, you and I usually rip Cali crowds, but watching it again, San Jose was they were pretty hot.
Yeah, I think Keith nailed it. I think it was the feel around this show. When you look at the lineup and the names and everyone you're getting to see, I mean, as we'll see later, The Rock is back, and you got Austin on the card, you got the WCW guys on the card, you got RVD here. The only guy you're really missing, and as much as we make fun of you, was Triple H. I mean, he's really the only big name we're not seeing on this show, and I guess Chris Benoit. But you're pretty much getting everyone else that you'd want to see. So there's really no reason they shouldn't have been this jacked up. You have really good matches on paper. You got the RVD Hardy ladder match, and X-Pac Tajiri is a good match on paper. Test and Edge, Storm and Edge, and the 2 main events. I mean, those are all really good matches on paper. Even the cage match, when you look at it. There was really no reason for that. I would have been really upset if they weren't hot for this show, because to me it was such a layup of a show to be really fired up for. So, I thought it was a great crowd. I thought they held up their end of the bargain. They're into every single match, and they stay hot. They don't really die down, and they do the right thing too. They're not counter or snarky in any way. They kind of go with the flow, and RVD is really the only guy they kind of out-cheered the Alliance guy with. Which made sense anyway, because that's how things were headed.
Yeah.
Keith, let me ask you this, because obviously I'm not going to talk to you again through these shows. Do you think RVD eventually, I know you're pushing for him to become world champion, do you think he should have become the leader of the Alliance, or do you think they should have switched him to the face side and made him a WWF star?
He was going to babyface himself anyway, so that might have been a good idea, to move him over to the other side, because he didn't really fit with the Alliance in the first place. And I was never a fan of the merging of the ECW and WCW. Anyway, it was just trying to leech off Paulie's heat, basically, I think.
I agree with that.
What they were shooting for. Yeah. No, definitely. I mean, like but a couple of months after that, he was a clear babyface, regardless of his, Alliance membership or not, I think.
Yeah. And getting back to the crowd quick, considering that the last 3 shows of the storyline, at least the next 3 pay-per-views, are all in pretty hardcore wrestling cities, Pittsburgh, St. Louis, and Greensboro. For this crowd to be just as hot as those would be is again great testament to the roster and the card they put together. All right, next up we have another unification match. This one consolidating the 2 pairs of tag team championships, and this one obviously had
6 autographed copies of a Backstreet Boys CD.
There was an obsession with that involved in this storyline too. All right, you have, of course, the WWF Tag Team Champions taking on the WCW Tag Team Champions. Now, before we get to the feuds, I want to ask you, Keith, because we've talked about, JR and I a lot of times on this show. I am always been a belt junkie. What was the best looking WCW belt during like the Monday Night War era? What was the best looking of the belts? What was your looking belt?
I thought the actual WCW ones were all really ugly. I was always a fan of the classic NWA tag team titles.
Me too.
So I don't know if I can list that as my answer.
No, sure, yeah.
Yeah, I'd go with those ones. Everything else was terrible, especially those ones that the Outsiders had. It was like they were significantly smaller when they were trying to be the NWO Tag Team Champions.
Yes.
I hated those ones.
Yep.
And yeah, I thought the ones they brought to the WWF were not great either. So yeah, I'm going to go with the classic Rock and Roll Express NWA Tag Team titles. I think.
I love those belts, yeah, and I like the old. I like the not the US title that they would eventually have, but the one before that, the one Luger had with the circular medallions. I always thought that was an awesome belt. I always liked that.
Yeah.
But these tag belts, these current WCW tag belts, had to be one of the ugliest belts in the history of belt making. They were those weird looking, like mangled sides plates, and it was just the ugliest belts ever. Who are holding those belts at this moment in time? Certainly not a WCW tag team. In fact, we have flip flops. The WWF tag team champions right now are Alliance members Diamond Dallas Page and who better than Canyon? Chris Canyon. How did those guys? How did they become WWF tag team champions, JR?
They became tag team champions by defeating the APA on the 8-9 SmackDown from Los Angeles to win those titles.
Yeah, that was actually Edge's Test's heel turn.
Yes,
they helped the Acolytes lose. They forced the Acolytes to lose. Meanwhile, the brothers of Nachos. Yep, him and the other guy. They were the WCW tag team champions. Of course, they had to put down a pair of guys that actually were pretty good. And who was that, JR?
Chuck Palumbo and Sean O'Hare on the 8/13 Raw from Chicago, just days after DDP and Canyon won their titles. Taker and Kane won the other set. And 1 week leading up to the show, Undertaker came to the arena with Sarah, and Kane told him that DDP had a locker room blocked off as a shrine to her in a continuation of a resurrected storyline that nobody wanted to see. No. When Taker got to the locker room, he was ambushed by DDP and Canyon. Around this time, the angle got a little bit more bizarre as Page went from playing mind games and messing with Taker to actually being obsessed with Sarah. Keith, what did you think of that whole storyline with Sarah and the Stalker?
Well, as very long-time readers of mine might know, I actually got into some legal trouble with WWF over that. Because after the initial vignettes were being shown on WWF TV of the Stalker and his voice distorted box, threatening Undertaker. Somebody on my website actually went through and ran it through what happened was they just turned down the pitch using some sort of computer software. So we ran it through and turned the pitch back up, and it turned out, of course, to be Vince McMahon actually being the voice of the Stalker. So he posted the audio file on the website, and we got a cease and desist letter from WWF's lawyers like 5 minutes later, I think it was. It was actually they were actually really not happy about that. And then they started sending other legal threats about my recapping the shows and things like that, and using the names of trademark superstars without further permission and that kind of thing. So people were kind of freaking out over that. But as it turned out, it was a lot of just empty threats over that. But there was that made for some couple of sleepless nights there. I gotta say, they know how to really craft a cease and desist letter, those guys.
Yeah, and after 5 minutes, you should be impressed. After only 5 minutes.
They were fast. Like, man, I didn't realize I guess I was like the website must have been gaining some mainstream popularity at that point, because they were all over that really quickly. But it was a fucking stupid angle. It was like, what more can you say about that? Like they're going to bring in one of the remaining biggest stars from WCW, and the angle is going to be that he's obsessed with the Undertaker's mannish wife. I mean, really? This is the angle that they're going to
after he had been
invasion.
After he was, we knew he was married to Kimberly, who smoked Sarah. I mean, not even close. Oh,
unbelievable.
But, yeah, like this was kind of the sign, I think, that things might not be going the way we want them in the invasion, as far as our dream booking scenarios go and everything like that. I mean, like the night that he came out and unveiled himself as the Stalker, I mean, DDP got a gigantic reaction, and it was to the point where you think, hey, they just made a top guy here. And,
right.
It's like they screwed that up, and it's astonishing.
And I feel like they could have saved it there by just saying, having him say, the stalker shit was just all, us fucking with you. It was the WCW fucking with you, and never mention it again. Don't bring Sarah on. You don't have to do any of it. Why did they have to bring it back here and make him be creepy with it again? It's like, just end it right there. Don't bring it back. Say it was all this fucking with Taker, and that's it. Nothing even to do with Sarah, just that he was messing with him. I don't get why they even had to take it any further. Scott, let me ask you this, or Keith, because Scott and I talked about this the last couple of shows, and I think we talked about it a little bit with Kevin. Mm-hmm. Do you feel that at the time the WWF was still getting such a benefit of the doubt that we weren't quite realizing yet? A lot of these things were starting to add up that we kept sweeping under the rug as, well, it's the WWF, they'll figure it out, they'll fix it. And there were a lot of red flags and glaring issues that we could have seen to see where we were headed. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Actually, I think a lot of it has been like, in fact, the same kind of thing that's been happening in the last year as well, where 2013 they had The Rock come back and had the real hot run all the way up to SummerSlam, and people were all let it play out and see where it goes and blah blah blah. And then now we're on like 18 million shitty pay-per-views in a row now, and I think it's time to concede they don't know what they're doing anymore. But yeah, it's a very similar thing in 2001. I think it was because 2000 was so ridiculously over the top great for show after show, and 2001 started out really great as well, and then they were handed the biggest angle of all time on a silver platter, and you figure, hey, this is unfuck-upable, right? Like there's no way that they can possibly get this wrong. It's the easiest thing in the world. You're bringing the bad guys, they beat WWF for a while, WWF come back and get the revenge, everybody's happy, and and they were just finding new ways to mess it up. And I think everybody kind of thought that it was too awesome to not be able to overcome it, and as it turned out, they can overcome anything with incompetence. The WCW was almost the same way too. Like in '97, '98, I feel like they kept getting the benefit of the doubt, and everyone assumed they were still doing well, still hot because they were selling out. But they had pre-sold out so many of those arenas that I feel like it took us the lag of like 6 months to realize that they just weren't turning it around and that things had gotten worse. And I feel like that happens here over the next year with WWF. And there were a lot of red flags, especially in the fall here, of things that we kept kind of ignoring. And there were even flashes of it in 2000, things that, okay, we'll let it go, because everyone was so in love. I mean, the WWF was such a fan's promotion and such an underground. It's hard to fathom now, but you almost forget how beloved and how in bed everyone was with them from like 98 through here. Everyone was just gaga over the WWF, and everything was always so happy-go-lucky a lot of times with them. So it was easy to sweep it under the rug because Vince listens to us. Ted Turner, he hated the fans. Eric Bischoff didn't give a shit about us, and he did what he wanted, and his friends ran the promotion to the ground. But not Vince. Vince listens to his fans. He encourages our signs and everything else, and that ended quickly with a thud. But for those 4 years, that was the fans' promotion. Vince would never bring back those old farts and put them on top of the promotion in the biggest shows of the year. What are you talking about? Exactly. The owner's friends coming in and running things? No, that's what WCW does.
Ugh. And The Undertaker at the time was bringing his friends in too. We'll get to that.
Turkey leg, hamburger, cheeseburger.
Yeah, exactly. Jalapenos, nachos. All right, and we'll get to that in the next month about friends. But so anyway, the little twist of the storyline I liked here was after Kanyon and DDP won the WWF Tag Team titles, Regal goes, because you're in my jurisdiction now, which I thought was kind of cool, I am forcing you to take on The Undertaker and Kane in a match at SummerSlam. Oh, and by the way, it's in a cage. I don't know. I like the whole "you're in my jujurisdiction now." I thought that was kind of, I don't know. Yeah. That was kind of a little nuance here, a little minutia. Hey, Regal was an underrated. We're not going to get to talk about him, so maybe we'll take a minute here and talk about him because I want to get Keith's thoughts on him as the authority figure. I thought he was flailing a bit coming out of the Jericho feud with that Duchess match, and ever since then, I thought he's been really, really good in the commissioner role. Ever since he really became a face for the first time in his career on TV for the most part. I mean, he's had spurts here and there, but in the first time in a major face role, I thought he was fantastic as a commissioner, a guy that didn't take any shit and really kind of did what he had to do to get business done. I thought he was fantastic in this role. Did you agree at the time and now, Keith? Yeah, Commissioner Regal was awesome. He's always vastly underrated. I mean, and even as it is now on as doing commentary on NXT, like he's vastly underused, and it should be him in that role rather than like JBL as the kind of the figurehead in NXT, because he could pull it off like he did in 2001, I think. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I almost miss him in the ring as much too. But the authority role was very cool, and I just like the minutia, that he was.
But that's what made him great. The little stuff. I mean, he nailed it. He was we always talk about Austin with the little stuff, and he came from the same school as Austin with the whole pay attention to the little things, and the big things will come easier.
Exactly, absolutely. So they are handed this match here as we unify the two pairs of tag straps.
Did you think it was too soon to start unifying the straps, Scott?
Oh well. Well, I'll chime in, and yeah, it was way too soon to be doing that. Actually, if anything, WCW should have been winning everything leading up to Survivor Series, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the light heavyweight and the cruiser, that one didn't bother me, but definitely the tag straps, they should have kept separate for a while. I mean, they weren't were they technically well, no, they weren't technically unifying them here. They didn't unify those.
Oh, right, yeah. That's right.
No, they're doing the separate but equal thing with them.
Yeah, they were just, both of them got to hold both pairs. The only belt technically unified here was the cruiserweight and the light heavyweight. They didn't unify everything until Survivor Series anyway. It felt like they unified them, but they really didn't. I hate tag cage matches. I hate them. They make no sense whatsoever. Why would you want to let your own guy see? And the other part of the minutia is, as much as I was not a big Taker fan at this point, he did kind of take advantage of the dumb stipulation, which I thought was awesome. The whole point of it is you need to get out. Both guys need to get out of the cage. And logically, does that really make sense? To leave one guy in there by himself against the other two. I just thought the whole concept was stupid. It was stupid that Undertaker took advantage of it. When he was on top of the cage at one point in this match, he told Kane to let Kanyon leave. Let him get out. And you're like, and Heyman's like, what is he doing? What is he doing? And then JR's like, what do you think he's doing? And now DDP is alone in a chained up set cage with the guy whose wife he's tormenting and his brother. So the one thing I'd say about Taker, as much as he was not everybody's favorite guy at this point, at least once again, the minutia of taking a stipulation of a dumb gimmick match, not the cage, a tag cage, and use it to their advantage. I thought that was fantastic. I don't know. What do you think, Jerry? I think I'm thinking too much into it. I don't know. I thought that was kind of neat that they took advantage of a dumb stip and worked it into the story.
I thought it made sense. They wanted to destroy DDP. They let Kanyon go. They didn't really care about him. So, no, I agree with you. I also like Jim Ross talking about Taker's history in his cage matches. He went through all of them. Shawn and Mick, and there's another one in there. Of course, they didn't talk about hanging the boss man. But, throwing Rikishi off the cage at Armageddon. So I thought that was cool to really build up the monster he becomes inside of cages. My issue here, and quick comment on Kanyon. I thought it was a big spot for him and kind of cool to see him lumped in with these guys. DDP, though, never presented as a threat to Taker in all this. So this match to me felt it didn't feel like a big-time tag title champion versus champion match because DDP was positioned as an inferior the whole time. We saw him already get killed at King of the Ring. He hasn't really done much to get over on Taker since. And now he's in here getting squashed again. They basically just beat the shit out of him and then, finish him off. I don't really get it. I don't get why they couldn't have DDP at least have him lay him out a couple times to show that he can maybe be somewhat of a threat on some level. Do you agree, Keith?
Yeah, they didn't like DDP. Like it was a message basically for the overpaid WCW guys that this is what's going to happen to you.
So stupid. What a waste.
It's just mind-boggling. It really is. Like I say, especially considering the reaction that he got coming in. Like you'd think above all that Vince McMahon would be more motivated by money than petty personal issues or gripes or that kind of thing. And obviously not, because it was just pure spite, the whole thing. And it was really kind of sad watching it.
And success was their worst enemy here because the arrogance that came from it. So they could do stuff like this. If they had gotten this chance, say, in like 97, where their backs were against a wall and they really needed to deliver, we probably would have gotten something better. The problem is here, the arrogance and the success, the levels they were having, they felt like they could fuck around with this kind of stuff. And it wouldn't matter because they're invincible to do what they want. They own the wrestling world.
Yeah, like 4 years earlier when they were doing the European tour, and they let the ECW guys come in for their invasion in New York there, and like that was awesome, and they kept all the ECW guys protected, and it was a new exciting thing, and it's like they were so desperate at that point for bodies to fill up the show that they were willing to step outside the box and let somebody else get over on their TV and promote a pay-per-view and everything, and that would never ever happen now, like I mean obviously, but like just for like the difference in attitude and time from even 4 years earlier when they were so desperate and being fan friendly and raw and edgy and everything like that, and to where they got to now is just it's just so sad.
Yep, I think you nailed exactly every point with that.
Yep.
As to what their issues were at the time. And the DDP, like I don't mind the finish here, him getting killed. Like to me, that's fine here because you're finishing off the storyline. Taker had been pissed off, and they wanted to end the stuff and with Sarah and all that. Like that's fine. The beef is really what happened before that. Taker did that the whole time, so it kind of was stupid now at this point to do it again. The finish here would have been fine if they had built up Paige as more of a threat leading in. Scott, we got a few other notes to talk about. So Kanyon was actually the U.S. champion. He had been handed the belt by Booker T because he finished when WCW went under. He was both world and U.S. champ. The next night on Raw, Paige came out. Sarah, for a match with Sarah and Undertaker, Taker chokeslammed him on the floor, and then Sarah pinned him, and pretty much the nail in the coffin of this angle, and really of Paige as any kind of threat after it was pinned by Sarah on national TV, which was just awful.
Yeah, stupid.
Also, sadly, the final pay-per-view match for Kanyon. He'll hang around for another year and a half or so, really until 2003 almost. On 10/29, he tore his ACL that took him out of action until May 2002. He was quickly re-injured again, had a serious allergic reaction to medication, knocked him out through October 2002, finally came back, worked in OVW, did some dark matches, popped up on TV in early 2003, never really got a push. The rest of his career spent in Velocity and dark matches, was not released till February of 2004. In October, wrestled his retirement match against DDP. His retirement was brief, started working the Indies again, July 2005, including a stop at TNA. In 2006, he began working a gimmick in which he portrayed an openly homosexual wrestler. During this time, Kanyon began claiming he actually was homosexual and he had been fired because of it. He would then flip-flop on those statements and eventually confirmed he was gay. It was also eventually revealed that Kanyon was suffering from bipolar disorder, and in April 2010, everything caught up to him, and he took his own life via antidepressant overdose on April 2nd. So, I mean, in a way, this is the peak of his career, sadly, and from here just spirals down out of control. The injuries killed him in October. A guy, because I think they liked him. I think they would have kept using him. Do you think so, Keith, or do you think he would have been having a short run if it wasn't for the injury anyway?
I think he would have better served as a trainer. I think actually,
true.
From what I could tell, like it seemed like the business wasn't for him. Like it was catching up to him, and you could tell. But I mean, I think he was a guy like a William Regal, where he could have kind of stepped aside and been a lot more helpful, training them on the side and kind of being a teacher rather than having to be out there and deal with the bullshit day after day like he did. Because it's like, say, obviously he's he wasn't made for it. It caught up with him too fast, just like everybody else.
I thought it was kind of sad too, and to this day I still, not that it matters at this point, but I still wonder if he even actually was homosexual, or if he really didn't know, or if he was that messed up. Yeah,
he was just fucked in the head. I mean, a guy that took a lot of concussions. I don't think he knew what it would. I mean, he very may well have been, but I said, Scott, who knows with the bipolar disorder, and I'm sure a guy that had a ton of concussions, took a lot of headshots at the end of WCW. So he just seriously had some serious issues. So it was sad. It was sad because he was a very entertaining guy in WCW. Even in the Men at Work days, he was pretty good for their role, and then he was great as Mortis, and the guy that had a lot of talent and. Just the emotional and those kind of issues just overtook him. Yeah. On a side note, if anybody, my good friend John, has the High Spots shoot interview with James Mitchell, and he talks a lot about Kanyon, because obviously Kanyon was, Mortis, right? I always get confused who he was with. And, because he managed him mostly in WCW. And he has a lot of nice stories about Kanyon, how he's a really nice guy, loved the business, just had a lot of issues, and I highly recommend getting it if you, I'm pretty sure it was High Spots. The shoot interview with James Mitchell talks a lot about Kanyon, and it's pretty touching. He was he said he was just a good guy who loved the business, but just had way too many skeletons in his closet to be able to manage them. So,
it was tough. And sadly, he's only known as the other guy on that team, pretty much. So the Undertaker and Kane, because they have to, are both WWF and
No, that pissed
WCW.
me off too. They pretty much just took over the division now. That was like, all right.
Tag team champions. Keith, talking about when I was talking about tag team cage matches, I think back to one of my favorite tag team cage matches of all time, which is Starrcade '85, which was Rock and Roll Express against Ole and Arn in the I think it was a tornado, if I remember correctly, or it was just a pin or submission. This is where the frustration for me about WWF only doing things their way. They should have just I know it ended up being a pin anyway that won it. Taker, I think, hit the last ride on DDP to get the pin. This is where, do you agree about the open-mindedness that WWF just needed to start being more practical with the way they were doing a lot of these matches? And I think that was another chink in their armor, the whole closed-mindedness about stipulations and stuff. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that was another reason why maybe there were some chinks in the armor, the closed-mindedness of booking even gimmicks and matches?
Oh yeah. Well, I've always hated escape cage matches to begin with. Like it's such a counterintuitive thing. It's like, I'm going to beat you so badly that I can run away and win. Like it's the classic way is the best way, basically, with the cage is up to prevent anybody else from coming in, and that way we can beat each other up until there's a decisive winner. Right? That's
right.
That's typically the way it should be. And to their credit, they did adjust over the years and kind of add in the pin or submission thing to their cage matches, to the point now where it's been a while since we've really seen an escape finish. I think, like, typically it does end with a pinfall or submission.
Right. Now I have to question you on this one though. Your thoughts on one match, and it's one of I'm going off the rails just a skosh, but a match that was just playing in here in my event center. A match where getting out of the cage was actually almost the impetus of the booking. And that was Brett and Owen from SummerSlam '94. And JR, I know it's one of your favorite matches of all time for that reason. I know, Keith, two of your favorite guys of all time right there. There was a case where getting out of the cage was the whole point. Did you agree with the booking in that instance, in that match?
Well, yeah, those within the confines of the stipulation, that was probably the best cage match that there's ever been. Like definitely the best escape big blue bar cage match. That was kind of the height of the gimmick, I think, as far as that goes. Plus, it was two guys who really understood the psychology behind it, and like with the crazy spots, like they're both diving for the door, grabbing each other's leg, and fighting for it, and making it seem like make that like that was the goal rather than like the secondary thing where it'd be somebody like Ultimate Warrior doing just a regular match and then walking out for the finish. Where it's something like that, where it's not like the stipulation is bolted onto a normal match as an afterthought. Like they were out there and they were constructing the match around the stipulation because they were both smart guys and awesome wrestlers. Right,
exactly. No, I just wanted to bring that up because again, it was on in the my event center here was the Brett and Owen match from SummerSlam '94. So there you go. So the brothers of Jalapeno Poppers are the both WWF and WCW tag team champions. All right, we're kind of cruising along. Pretty good show so far, both our show and the pay-per-view itself. We still have some huge matches to come, but we'll take a break. When we come back, WCW's top belt, WWF's top belt on the line. But first, a word. Because...
Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
What's up, everybody? This is Kevin Kelly from Ring of Honor Wrestling. Make sure you check out The Kevin Kelly Show each and every week. PlaceToBeNation.com. We'll be talking about wrestling in the past and wrestling today. Plus, be talking about all kinds of sports and pop culture, whatever's on your mind, too. We'll answer your questions each and every week. The Kevin Kelly Show, right here. PlaceToBeNation.com.
What's that?
Chad, do you hate it when commercials run and run?
What do you mean, Parv?
Oh, never mind.
Listen to Where the Big Boys Play on PlaceToBeNation.com and find us on iTunes. We are the only WCW Supercard exclusive podcast.
Hey, this is Rob Naylor. Do you still enjoy pro wrestling? Believe it or not, I still do. So you better join myself and Will on the Goodwill Wrestling Podcast exclusively at PlaceToBeNation.com.
Shit, I wasn't ready. Hey, this is Will. If you like listening and... Shit. Hey, this is Will. If you like listening to guys talk about old school wrestling, follow me and Charles on Wrestling with the Past podcast on Place to Be Nation.
So you got the script, yeah? You all got it?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds terrible. The Titans of Wrestling... Oh, brilliant. Sorry. The Titans of Wrestling are...
Pete, I'm a lead analyst for the show. I break down matches.
Kelly, lead historian. I'm a jobber lover. Are you?
Johnny and I drink.
And yes, me, Bob. We watch old school wrestling and love it.
Titans of Wrestling. You know you want to hear it.
What's going on? This is the Godfather, Nate Milton, with an offer you cannot refuse. Each and every week you can join Marcus Vanderberg, Big Nasty Alfred Kunawa, and myself on the Kings of Sport podcast, available exclusively on PlaceToBeNation.com, your one-stop spot for the best in sports and pop culture.
What's your one-stop home for your pop culture needs? Of course, PlaceToBeNation.com. We have everything you could ask for when it comes to pop culture. Now first, wrestling. We're definitely your hookup for all show recaps, including Raw, SmackDown, Impact, Ring of Honor, all of WWE's other programs as well. We have previews, live blogs, breakdowns for all WWE and UFC pay-per-views. You want sports? No problem. Place to Be Nation has extensive articles on football, basketball, MMA, boxing, and baseball. From Andrew Reish's history lessons to the return of the hack to the Cowboys call, we have the best in comprehensive sports knowledge and opinions. With a loaded staff of hardcore pop culture writers, we also specialize in comics, TV, music, movie pieces. Of course, you can't forget Jen and Justin's journey through the 90s. You want podcasts? Well, look no further than Place to Be Nation, the home for the best catalog and variety of shows you'll find anywhere on the net. There's the Place to Be podcast, where the big boys play, the Brad and Chad Show, Wrestling with the Past, Titans of Wrestling, Goodwill Wrestling, Richard and the Mailman, Grapple Talk, and the Kings of Sport with our good friend Nate Milton. I want to take a second to thank our supporters and ask you to check out their great sites. Graham Cawthon and the History of WWE.com, a complete archive of wrestling shows throughout history. Also our friend Dave at TWFnews.com, your home for wrestling news updates and great conversation. Also check out PileDriverWrestling.net for all the latest wrestling news and the home of the great Old School Wrestling Review podcast and much more. And while you're at it, if you want to chat with fellow fans about wrestling's past and present, check out Scott Keith's blog at rspwfaq.com. So for everything you need, your pop culture fix, check out PlaceToBeNation.com, the only place to be in the pop culture world.
This is the king of old school, Steve Corino, the true voice of Ring of Honor, and you're listening to the Place to Be podcast.
All right, Nation, we're back here chatting SummerSlam 2001. Me and Scott Keith, rspwfaq.com, in the house here to chat about the show with us. We have two matches left. Scott, why don't you cue us up on the first one?
Yes, the last two, the two big ones. Up now, the World Wrestling Federation Championship on the line. Can't remember the last time their big belt was not, non-Rumble anyway, was not last. It's been a while. Your champion, he's had it since WrestleMania 17. That is, of course, the face of the alliance because of what happened the previous month, and that is Stone Cold Steve Austin. Turned his back on the WWF at Invasion when he booted his opponent in the head and then stunned him. Helped Booker T get the pin and get the win for the alliance. That guy, your boy. Couldn't think of a good song tonight, so I'm going to pass on it. Kurt Angle, your man. And interesting feud. The reason I liked it, and you said it earlier, JR, about we didn't see much of their interaction because they had some funny stuff, but on pay-per-view there wasn't much going on, but they were still kind of laughing and yucking it up until Invasion, and then it turned.
Right. And
I noticed for the first time the real Kurt Angle, the Kurt Angle everybody really wanted to see, finally stepped to the fore. Not necessarily face heel, but just the goofing off and everything, even through 2000 for the most part, even when he was champion the first time. Everything changed at this point. Do you agree for him? in terms of his character?
Asking me or Keith?
Oh, you.
Oh, yeah, I think so. I would agree with that 100%. I think I think they both changed. Austin was doing more of still kind of doing the pandering and the whole wanting to be loved. And yeah, Kurt, this definitely was a change from what he had been for a long time, and he never really gets back there again. I would agree with that. I mean, you still get some of the goofiness, but you never get back to where he was.
Keith, what do you think? Do you think that, even when he was, the heel in 2000 with the whole Stephanie Triple H stuff, and even when he won the title the first time, we never saw the killer in him that we knew we wanted to see and we knew he had in him until this moment?
Well, we kind of saw the killer at No Way Out when he was putting the ankle lock on The Rock, which is still one of my favorite Kurt Angle moments. But I mean, they really, really wanted to push him as the all-American superhero, and I guess this was one of the few times when you can say that they were lucky that the 9/11 attacks happened, because that really did end up being the kind of the perfect impetus to turn him into the all-American conquering babyface that they really wanted, and that the people wanted at that time too. So it was sad as it is. It was good happenstance for Angle that it happened, I guess.
So you don't think
weird way?
Do you think they would have gotten there either way?
I don't think so. I think that his star power was kind of being overshadowed by Austin hitting out of the park with his paranoid character at this point, because Austin was just hitting on all cylinders, even though the character was not doing great as a box office thing. Like in the ring, he was just a machine at this point. It was kind of a crazy renaissance that he was going through as a worker, and I think Angle really would have been kind of overshadowed beside him without something to really rally the people behind him as the hero and the top guy that they wanted him to blossom into.
Do you think he would have won the title anyway?
Oh, I think so. I mean, they're going through with it no matter what, obviously, but I think it would have been a case where people might have rebelled against it, or there might have been backlash against it, and being like, oh, we don't need this Captain America crap now, blah blah blah. It's 2001 and
right
and like that. It just happened to be that circumstances worked out at exactly the right time to make him into that.
I liked also at this point for Austin, the whole leading by example, and he was kind of thinning the herd and roughing guys up, and but I noticed that for the most part, I mean, he ripped up. Obviously, the big gag was he was beating up on Taz. He did get into Raven, I think, a couple times, but it was funny how, for the most part, until we see it after Unforgiven, between that No Mercy, that he kind of avoids RVD. We talked about RVD earlier. He kind of avoids him. He's just, RVD's kind of just in the crowd. He's in the group, but Austin kind of doesn't get in his face as much as the other guys. I thought that was very interesting.
A lot of the Austin stuff too, getting in their faces and being overbearing, that hadn't really started yet either. That really starts more right after the show, where he becomes kind of the overbearing boss in a way of the Alliance. Like he's not leading into the show. He wasn't quite there yet. Do you agree with that, Keith? I didn't feel that way anyway.
Yeah, he was becoming the thing he hates. Like he was turning into Vince McMahon, and I don't know. I guess you could go deeper and say that that's what convinced him to turn back again, right? Because he saw what he was becoming and decided to go against it. But yeah, definitely I concur with that too.
Yeah, I mean he did do it a little bit, because it was a lot of the pregame, a lot of the build promo before this. I mean he kept telling Taz, "You're pathetic," and then he gets into Raven's face. "You suck." I thought that was still.
I guess you're right. Maybe he was doing some of it already.
"You suck."
It felt like it really picked up though after this.
No, it did pick up after, but you did start seeing an inkling of it heading into the show. But you were right. But definitely JR, it really fires up because he's emboldened after this match. This match is, I mean, we've talked about it many times, JR, in lists and stuff. Maybe one of the best SummerSlam matches of all time. Just a disgusting brawl. This was definitely your thoughts on this, Keith? A snapshot of your typical Attitude Era title match. Just, they don't get in the ring for like the first 6 minutes or something, and they're just beating the snot out of each other. And Austin was so aggressive, more aggressive than you ever saw as a face. I mean, he was just pummeling He was pummeling Kurt beyond submission. Would you call this the snapshot of the perfect Attitude Era title match?
Oh, it was an awesome match, that's for sure. When people refer to, we often get the question, like, what is WWF style, like, or main event style that they're talking about? Like, and this is a perfect one to point to it, because, like, as you said, you get the brawling outside of the ring to start. You got the guys trading the finishers, that kind of aggressive brawling overall style to it, and instead of the more pure mat based style. And yeah, it's got everything. And there's one particular spot that I really love, even though it's kind of horrifying in retrospect. This is where Austin's so pissed off at Angle that he rams him into the post 7 times.
Yes.
Yeah.
God. And it usually bugs me as suspension of disbelief problem when somebody goes into the flat post once and comes up and they're bleeding all over the forehead and everything like that. So to have Austin do that, and the great thing is he didn't start bleeding until like the 3rd or 4th shot.
Right.
So it really was believable. He's smashing this guy's head into the steel post multiple times to draw that kind of gory blood, and it made sense. And it's like after 6 times, he damn well better be bleeding at that point.
And even the back of his head too, right? Wasn't he to the back?
Oh,
yeah.
I know, it was one of the most spectacular blade jobs I've seen.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome. You know what else was great at this match too? It was a really fresh feud. I mean, these guys, they had been paired up over the summer in this kind of unlikely friendship, and they had a couple matches earlier in the year when Austin came back, but it was a really fresh feud on top for the title. And we hadn't seen this at all. These guys hadn't been matched up at all, especially with Austin in this prime Renaissance period. When he came back in early 2001, he was still shaking the rust off. So this was awesome to see on many levels, because not only are they both in great shape and both in prime shape, we hadn't seen it before in these roles. Austin being the heel and Angle being the face was new, and it was just so much freshness about this match that's what made it really pop, I thought. And yeah, the 2 biggest stars of the summer and a lot of hype behind it. It really was a major, major match. And I remember being pretty upset when it wasn't the main event at the time. Maybe I get why, but I remember on that night I was like, damn, this is the match. This needs to be the top of the card. And we'd find out why at the end of it. They put it here, but tons of brawling on the floor. Austin is really beats the shit out of him, and I thought Jim Ross, he outshined Paul Heyman here, which I thought was a rarity for this year. I thought Heyman was always the stud of the booth, but in this match, I thought JR was awesome.
I agree. JR was definitely when JR takes. I mean, first of all, JR is one of the greatest play-by-play guys of all time. But when JR is legitimately, like, personally invested in a match. And he loves both these guys. We know his relationship with Steve, and he loves Kurt. You could just feel the real passion. I mean, not that JR ever took a match off. Never. Well, maybe sometimes, but every announcer takes a match off sometimes. But you could really tell he is so invested in this match that he's just chewing Heyman up and spitting him out. What do you think, Keith?
Yeah, I mean, like this was definitely a case where JR knew that Austin was on fire right now, and he was kind of bringing his game up to match Austin's, I think. It was the Steve Austin show. Was this really match was basically it? Like it was great. And like ever since the matches that Austin had with Benoit, I think in May on Raw and SmackDown that year, like really just found some other gear that he brought it up to kind of, I don't know if he was trying to prove himself again after the injuries or what, but yeah, he was just hitting on all cylinders, and it was great stuff. And actually, there was another. I don't think JR really brought it up, but there was another spot in the match too that I really loved, where Austin did another repeat of the sleeper spot with Bret Hart, where Bret walked the ropes right and rolled over, and because Austin had experience with that, though, he held the he knew how to reverse out of it, and I don't know if JR brought that up or not, but like
he did because JR says we haven't seen this move since the Ringmaster used it.
Yeah, exactly. So like
it was pretty funny.
Yeah, I thought it was a nice touch to throw it in there too, to show like a little bit of an Easter egg for people who were were longtime Austin fans watching that as well. Just another layer to the match. So
Yep. No, definitely. And it was early in the match. I would say 12 or 13 minutes in that Kurt kicks out of the first stunner. I was stunned, no pun intended. I didn't think that was. I mean, I thought only Rock was able to kick out of the stunner, and that was crazy. And then he kicked out of it again. That was nuts. I mean, the match is just so well done.
3 of them he kicks out of.
Yeah, so well done on every level.
And I like too how the story was. It's funny, we talked about Brett and Owen in the cage. It almost felt the same here a little bit, where Austin was just trying to almost beat him unconscious and get the fuck out of there. Like, he didn't even care if he won or not. He just wanted to render Angle unconscious and out of the way so he could just leave with his belt. And he didn't give a shit about pinning him, making him submit. He keeps throwing him to the floor, and they keep brawling on the floor. He had no interest in wrestling him in the ring, and I thought that was a nice touch too, because he knew Angle could just outwork him on the mat. So Austin wrestled a match that he knew Angle would have a hard time keeping up with, and that was just pummeling him until he couldn't continue, and then Austin could run away with his title.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, the fear thing, which I was never totally crazy about.
Oh, he was so good at it.
But he was so damn good at it, though, being like a paranoid nut job. That doesn't kick in. That really doesn't kick in until...
I don't know. He was doing it pretty well here.
Well, he does. I mean, he pretty much says it the night after Invasion when he says that... I like when he goes, no longer. So he fired that line out. Great. You want to hug Kurt Angle. It was like so strange, but I guess in a good way. Like so psychopathic, if that's such a word. Just so great. And then the kicker, which really pisses everybody off, the third referee, Alliance ref Nick Patrick. I always wanted those white WCW polos. I always thought those were cool. He comes in. Kurt does the Olympic Slam, goes for the pin. Nick Patrick does the 1, the 2, and then pauses and calls for the bell.
Yep.
And Austin is disqualified for roughing up 2 referees, and Angle wins the match, not the way he wanted, and JR just goes batshit.
Yeah.
It's so great. And he gets in and afterwards when they do this, the camera shot of the table, he getting in Heyman's face. Like, JR is just so fired up. I never realized how awesome he adds to the package of this match.
Oh yeah,
he's just so fired up.
Yeah, he was phenomenal in this one. And the stakes were high, the heat was high, and I liked the finish because I'm not always a big screw job guy, but I liked it here to set up September, and I thought it made sense that Austin was finding a way to escape. And the fact that it was Nick Patrick made it great, too, because he was the dickhead heel ref with the rep that didn't give a shit to screw guys over. So it all made sense. The crowd was red hot, rocking the whole time, and I was cool with the finish here. What did you think, Keith?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of my favorite matches ever. It was spectacular. It's actually Austin kind of pissed off the writing staff with it, though. Like one of the things I was talking about, my friends in the writing staff at the time were complaining because the original booking for the match was Angle kind of beating Austin from pillar to post for the whole thing, kind of forcing him to get himself disqualified, which of course was a totally different way that the match shook down. And I actually think that the way that Austin rebooked it for himself worked out better. But yeah, it would have been a much different match, basically.
Yeah, I agree with you, Keith. I think the way they did it was much better because you would think Angle coming out and beating the crap out of him made him seem stronger, and I guess you could argue it that way, but I liked this better because Angle looks like a monster that he takes this incredible beating, and they're still in the position at the end that Austin needs to get fucked out of, has to fuck him out of the title with the ref because it just makes him look even crazier that he survives that, and then he's still to the point where he was ready to win. So I'm glad they did it this way and that they didn't do the other finish or the other match structure. This was much, much better.
Yeah, plus people get behind an underdog rather than having somebody come out and be, the dominant hero, and that's exactly the kind of thing that people were constantly rebelling against, is having the John Cena's shoved down their throat that way. And that tends to be their instinct to make new stars that way, and sometimes it works. But Austin is a guy who has not only is a great worker, but he has such a great head for the business, and I'm sure he knew that it would have backfired if they had tried that. So he knows how to go out there and build the sympathy for Angle as a monster babyface, and then give him the hope spots and give him the comeback and build to something where they can make something out of Angle later on.
I agree. The last thing you wanted was Austin getting sympathy here.
Yeah. So Austin loses the match. Kurt Angle wins by disqualification, and Angle gets hosed. I got a theory about this match later. Another theory how this match maybe could have been booked differently. But this was actually not the main event. It is now time for our actual main event.
Hey, PTB Nation, it is now time for the Rob Houston Memorial Hacksaw Jim Duggan Update.
Place to be nation. This is Mark Claire with your Vincent Kennedy McMahon health update. Now, as some of you may know by now, I had to leave Vince's side this weekend to go check out the Royal Rumble in Pittsburgh. And while the ending of the show did leave, a little bit of a sour taste in my mouth, I was content to know that Vince, with his love of the Giants, would be thrilled with the Batista victory. So I held back my yes chance for Vince's sake while visiting him back here in the hospital in Stamford. And now, unfortunately, I have nothing new to report in the way of Vince's health. Doctors still do not know when he will recover. But as long as that heart is beating, as long as that pulse is ticking, I will stay here until Vince makes a full recovery. And I will not stop. I will not rest until we find out just who poisoned my hero, who spiked his cocaine stash of my surrogate father, Mr. Vincent Kennedy McMahon. Now, in some positive news, we did receive a hot tip this week on the tip line, the VKM Tips line. Again, that is VKMTips@placetobenation.com. If you have any thoughts, theories, baseless accusations, please send them our way so we can help us out with this investigation. Now, this tip is from Ryan S. We will not say his last name to protect his identity. And Ryan S. says, I have a hunch that it can be one of three suspects, or maybe all three. Jake's daughter, of course referring to Jake the Snake, soon to be Hall of Fame inductee, her boyfriend, Sugar Tits LaRue, or Jim Duggan, because VKM made the update all about himself when it's supposed to be about Jim Duggan WCW results, and Duggan just couldn't take it anymore. It could also be Jake's daughter and Sugar Tits, because VKM was getting more views than the other two combined. That's my guess. And Ryan, we want to thank you for that, because that is a very interesting theory. I mean, as people know, this did start out all about Hacksaw Jim Duggan, but the past few weeks before the incident, it did become all about Vince, all about the partying, all about the Pussy Posse, and it got a little bit off the rails. So it's a very good theory, and I am confident that private detective J.R. Severio Rotella will be looking into this one very closely. Now, as you know, I have been at each and every vintage vault from Vince's past that he has spent his entire life recording. And here is the latest. This one is from early April, the year 2000.
God damn it, it's cold up here. This is fine. They call this shit God's country? Oh, I call it Bischoff country because it fucking sucks. Coming off a red hot WrestleMania, I gotta come up here to fucking... Where are we? Rotella? Winnipeg? Manitoba? Calgary? I don't know. This shit's all the same to me. I'm tired of this. We're getting huge ratings. WCW's in the shitter. Raw's awesome. SmackDown's awesome. Every other show I have is awesome. I'm awesome. And I got these losers in their mother's basements on the internet talking shit on me. Well, I went through. I pulled out a bunch of reviews of WrestleMania, and I'm going house to house. I'm going to call them out. Smack them in the face, put them in the Boston Crab, and make them submit to me, Vincent Kennedy McMahon. All right, are we at the first house or what? This house is actually... What? Oh, it's an apartment building. It's a big house, so I wouldn't imagine this guy would actually own a house. He's probably dwindling in the basement somewhere, maybe the maintenance man. All right, what number are we going to? Come on. Get the fucking door, Armento! Christ. All right. Vincent McMahon, open the fucking door! Open up! Keith, I know you're in there! Open up!
Hold on.
Put down the Doritos and into the fucking door!
How's it going, Vince?
How's it going, Vince? What do you mean, how's it going, Vince? You see this in my hand right here? This is your review of WrestleMania 16. How do you explain yourself?
Well, your doofus son-in-law put himself over again. So
who?
Your future doofus son-in-law. Sorry,
Godfather D'Lo Brown versus the Big Boss Man of Bill Buchanan. 1 star. Insanely long. And what fucking match were you watching?
Same one you were watching, Vince.
Bill Buchanan's the future of the World Wrestling Federation. Have you ever seen a big man come off the top rope like him? And you give it 1 star? Are you working like golf? Is this backwards?
That was a very well-earned star, I'll have you know. I don't give out star ratings easily.
Head Cheese versus TNA, my favorite match of the night, and you give it -2 stars? That was a slugfest, a slobber knocker. -stars? I didn't even know that existed. When Dave Meltzer was blowing coke with me back in '83, I didn't hear anything about -stars. All of a sudden, that asshole watches one tape from Japan. He turns his back on me, and all you clones drinking Mountain Dew and living in your mom's basement fucking all of a sudden follow suit? How do you explain yourself?
Well, to be fair, I don't drink Mountain Dew, but...
Don't get sassy with me. I'll get Armento in here. They'll shave your head so you look the same.
Okay, calm down, Vince, calm down.
Terry versus the Cat, titillating TNA, -5 stars. Keith, you're killing me. Aren't you a man? Didn't you feel your testicles moving during this match?
Well, we didn't actually get any nudity on pay-per-view, so I had to deduct stars from it.
It's all about imagination. And maybe you had Val Venus in there too. Whatever, you had it all. Whatever you could want. You know Val Venus rhymes with penis, right? That's the joke?
Oh, really?
Keith, I don't like your sass. Get in my face. Dean Malenko, Eddie Guerrero, Perry Saturn, we bring these guys in because you clowns on the internet are crying that they need to be saved, like anyone has ever paid a dime to see these assholes. I bring them in, you give their match 2 stars, Scott Keith. I thought these guys were your heroes.
Well, kind of, yeah. Those are 2 very well-earned stars. I'm a tough ratings.
Tough ratings. What have you done to become a tough rating person?
I speak Canadian here, Vince. You got to cut me some slack.
You speak Canadian. If I ever have to come back to this godforsaken fucking country again, I am going to off myself in the back of the limo and make Rotella clean it up. Main event, Triple H, Big Show, The Rock, and Mick Foley back out of retirement. A well-earned long-term retirement. He comes back, finally back to the ring after fans have been clamoring for his return. 2.5 stars. This is the biggest main event in WrestleMania history with the best finish ever. And you say it's a bad match with a wrong finish? Explain yourself, Scott Keith.
Well, it's I guess it might have been a fresh thing for Triple H to win. And he is kind of an underdog. I might have been underrating it just a little bit, but where's your daughter, Vince? Have you checked to see what she's doing right now?
She's in the limo with Mark Claire, so I'm sure she's getting busy.
Oh, okay. I just want to make sure there wasn't anything going on with her and Triple H. I've heard rumors, it's kind of weird. I heard they might be, more than just on-screen friends.
No, you don't know what you're talking about. Stop reading the dirt sheets. I told you, Meltzer's got it out for me. Ever since I stole Bertha Faye from him, he's never been the same.
Oh, man.
We used to be good friends, and it's all ruined through that.
It's always women, isn't it?
Harvey Whippleman is in the mix. It got ugly real fast. So, your bottom line, another ripoff, this is a major league misfire. Major league misfire.
I sat through your shitty 12-hour pregame show for this one, so I feel like I was owed more as a fan than I got.
The only major league misfire was your father not pulling out. That was a major league misfire, Keith. How about that?
That hurts on a personal level, Vince.
Oh, it does? Good, because that was the fucking point, you jackass. Christ. You listen to me. When I read your Backlash rant in a month, what?
Oh, hold on. I'm getting an ICQ message from Sean Shannon.
What the fuck is ICQ? Are those clowns we had to perform at SummerSlam 3 years ago?
Just give me a second. You can stand there and rant. I just got to go deal with something on my website. I'll be back in a minute.
Where'd you get all these fucking bootleg DVDs? What are you doing with this shit? These tapes? You know this shit is copywritten, right? Keith!
Vince, I'm going to have to cut you off there. Apparently Sean Shannon has gone crazy and turned into a transsexual and has hijacked my website. I gotta deal with some stuff.
What, is Vince Russo booking your fucking life now? What the fuck is going on?
Yeah, it feels like that way, doesn't it?
Oh, Christ. All right, go ahead. I'll hang out here.
Okay.
All right, I think he's gone. Rotella, get the matches. Quick. Pour some gas on the couch, light it on fire, let's get the fuck out of here. Yeah, just like Kane does. The same shit like you did with the casket. All right. Let's go. Hurry up. Light it. Let's go. Run.
The tunnel with buckets of dawn, whisper in my ear, he wanna get his fuck on. I dug him, so I fucked him. It wasn't nothing. He wanted me to suck him, but I.
Well, Scott, I guess we finally figured out the mystery behind the burnt apartment.
I knew it was him all along.
God damn it.
First off, Keith, why didn't you hide the DVDs? Jesus, man. Oh my God. You're supposed to put them in like boxes and put like, I don't know, vases or plastic flowers or something. Can't leave those DVDs out. First of all, but secondly,
to be fair, they would have been videotapes at that point, not DVDs.
Well, that's true too. Yeah, he probably wouldn't even know. He probably thought they were coasters or something he could snort coke off of.
Vince is always ahead of the curve, so.
Yeah. Secondly, ICQ. Wow. Don't they do like their own wrestling show in a cave in Illinois or something? Or I don't know. In any event, well, the mystery continues.
Wait a minute though. I have to wonder though. Is it legally binding evidence to be a comedy spot on a podcast to convict somebody of arson 10 years after the fact?
It could be.
Would that hold up in a court of law?
I really hope nothing ever said on this podcast will hold up in a court of law.
Yeah, we'll all end up in Attica.
Because I have been curious who did burn down the apartment all those years ago. So that's...
just blame Armento. ARM. Oh, no. All right. Speaking of setting the world on fire, let's go to our main event. For the first time, probably ever, another world title is the final match of a WWF pay-per-view. The WCW. And finally, this makes sense.
Yes.
Speaking of going to court, your WCW World Heavyweight Champion, the Booker Man, and no, not Kevin Sullivan, Booker T, taking on the returning Great One, as VKM would say, The Rock. Of course, Rock's been gone since the night after WrestleMania when he got the snot beat out of him in the cage by the awesome Power Trip. No comments on you, Keith. And he has returned, and of course they were kind of, he was back and forth on, who he wanted to join. He want to ditch the WWF, but Vince did wrong him at WrestleMania. And of course he would eventually pick after he rock bottomed both Vince and Shane, and then of course he would eventually pick the WWF. I kind of dug that little hook there of like Rock didn't just come back triumphantly and dive right in. It was kind of like, well, Vince, you did kind of screw me over 5 months ago, kind of thing. What do you think of that, JR? I kind of dug that he didn't just come in and like, I'm gonna take over the whole thing. Like it was, they had that kind of little bit of suspense. I thought that was kind of cool.
No, I agree. I thought it was nice. Nice continuity for a company not always known for it. And of course, Rock was reinstated by Vince because he had been suspended. Don't forget.
Yep.
And as we mentioned, he had been shooting the Scorpion King. Would he join the Alliance? Would he join WWF? Like you said, answer came on 7:30. Made his first appearance since April 2nd, and he delivered rock bottoms to both Vince and Shane, and then said Rock has finally come back to the World Wrestling Federation. Rock and Austin on the same side would have been illogical anyway, so it made more sense for him to side up with Vince. Following Thursday on SmackDown, Booker T challenged The Rock on behalf of the Alliance to a match at SummerSlam. Following Raw on 8-6, Rock faced Shane McMahon in a street fight, and Rock won, but was later beat down by Shane and Booker. Rock accepted Booker's SummerSlam challenge at following Thursday on SmackDown, and provided the WCW title was on the line. On the 8/13 Raw, Rock and Chris Jericho lost a tag match to Booker and Rhino, and after the match, Booker delivered a rock bottom of his own to the Great One, renaming it the Bookend, which of course he had used as the name in WCW. The following Thursday on SmackDown, Shane said that Booker would indeed defend the WCW title against The Rock at SummerSlam. In the main event that night, Rock and Booker fought in a lights-out match, only Booker bookended Rock on the announce table. Keith, do you think that at the time, this was a bit of a dream match? Coming off 2000 mainly.
I was a fan of Booker T to a certain degree, but I don't think he was being treated well as a main guy in there. He was kind of presented as the top guy that they can get from WCW who wasn't under an exorbitant contract already, kind of thing. It was
let me reword this actually then for you. Was it a dream match leading to, like, before this happened? Like, say in 2000, was it a dream match that people looked to say, hey, someday I hope we get Rock and Booker would be really cool? Because Booker was almost positioned as the Rock version in WCW.
Yeah, I guess in that sense it was. To me, it always came across as desperate on WCW's part, building up Booker like that. Like the kind of that half-ass thing with the bookend, and Vince Russo trying to come up with all of his versions of the more successful gimmicks from WWF and that kind of thing. So I don't know, it came across as kind of second-rate with Booker, and Booker's a guy who didn't really impress me coming into WWF. He's somebody who's typically only works up to the level of his opponent. So it was, he was not really a red hot commodity coming into it or anything like that, and it was kind of a lackluster feud for me, to be honest. Even though The Rock's my boy, so he can do no wrong, and it was nice to have him back from Hollywood and and everything like that. And back when it was something new and different for him to go off and shoot a movie and then come back and win a world title without much reason.
Right, and no one got angry at the time.
And no one got angry at the time. Yeah, exactly. Because we were glad to see him back again. So yeah.
Very glad. Do you think they should have flipped these two matches?
Oh yeah.
You stole my question.
Oh,
sorry, Scott.
That's okay.
Keith, what's your thoughts as to why?
Yeah, I know that Austin Angle had the kind of bummer finish, but God, it was so much more of a great match. And I understand why they did. Like I know it's the Rock's triumphant return and everything like that, and putting the over as the big babyface hero and everything. But it felt like such a flat finish to me coming off of that. Like who's gonna follow Austin and Angle, And it's like, how do you know that in advance, though, right? Like, I probably would have done the same thing. Like I understand why they did it, and I know you can't go out there and know that something's gonna destroy everything else like Austin and Angle did, but I think with the benefit of hindsight, yeah, definitely it should have went last.
It was so paint by numbers, this match too. I mean, in a good way. Like, it was one of those ones where, like you always say, perfectly acceptable wrestling. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just very by the numbers. It's like, here's this, here's that, here's this, here's that, here's the finish. And that's because Booker was just one of those guys, I thought. And unless he was in there with someone who could really work, like a Benoit or an Angle, he was really kind of a guy that just went through his progressions and hit the finish. And it was never bad. He was usually solid, but not someone you're going to get like a stellar main event from. So the crowd, I think, was happy to see Rock win. And and I think Booker was actually booked fairly well in this match. Like, he was positioned as Rock's equal throughout most of this match, and Rock pretty much just steals the win at the end in a way. Scott, did you buy it all, the tease with the chair shot from Shane?
Not really.
Yeah, me neither.
Not really. I didn't think so. My theory here, I've been thinking about this all day today after watching it this morning. What do you guys think, not only of flopping matches, but flopping results? I think Booker should have won here, or should have kept the title, and then Angle wins the huge match at the end.
Now you stole my thought right from my notes I've written out here.
Because two reasons. Number one, and yes, I know the next pay-per-view is in Pittsburgh, but when did Vince ever give a fuck about that? Right. I think Booker needed to keep his legitimacy. I think he needed to keep the belt to keep the juice going with their own guy.
Right, and they were going to do that match again the next month anyway. So you could have had Rock win it there. I think it's a great point.
Yeah, and I think you could have had Austin win it back too. So you could have still had Kurt have it for only a month. But I think these two matches should have been flip-flopped. Booker should have either won cheap, or you have the DQ here.
Yeah, I think you do the DQ. I don't think you could beat Rock in his first match back.
Yeah, no, you win. Yeah, Booker wins cheap. I mean, Rock wins by DQ. Shane interferes, and then you have the awesome Austin Angle match, and you have Austin tap out to the ankle lock and end the show with Angle as your WWF champion. What do you think, Keith? You think that could have worked?
Yeah, I think it could have worked. Overall, like I'm okay with putting Angle over in the big match like that, because it is like the second biggest show of the year, and it's fine with that. For me personally, I wouldn't have beaten any of the Alliance guys until it came time for WWF to make the big comeback around Survivor Series. Mm-hmm. Like, this 50-50 stuff just killed it. Like, it should have been WCW going out there and just like raping WWF at every turn, and WWF desperately trying to figure out how to counter it until somebody like RVD jumps ship and becomes their big hero to rescue them, or something along those lines.
Let me go devil's advocate on you though, Keith. Would it have been believable? Because you would have had to do a lot of rebuilding, because WCW just had that loser stank, because they were the company that these guys went out of business and were tanking. And I know you're not going to admit that on TV, but there was a smart fan base at the time, and it would have been a little tougher to buy into. I think I get why they did the 50-50, but that only makes sense if WCW is staying around. If WWF's going to win in the end, I think you have to go your route. I just don't know how you rebuild the image quick enough to make it believable. I think the only way your way works to have them dominate is to have brought some of those bigger names in off the bat.
Well, yeah, they should have.
Right.
They should have brought Goldberg in right off the bat, basically. I think that's everybody kind of agrees on that. He would have been one pay-per-view against Steve Austin would have justified whatever money that they threw at him, like up to whatever ridiculous amount to pay out the contract. Like they could have done like 1 million buys off that in the one match. But that's getting close to rebooking the Invasion again, and I don't think that we want to go down that road. But the thing with with WCW was they had the stink of loserdom on them. I guess you could say that, but I mean Vince McMahon owned everything and controlled all of the wrestlers and controlled all of the outcomes. He could take the stink of loserdom away in a month if he wanted to by having them win all the time and be total badasses. Because it's WCW. It might not be believable, but Vince owns everything. So who cares if his guys are getting beat, except for a weird macho pride thing that obviously he had going on.
Right. I think the best way to rehab the WCW image would have been to sandbag the guys they didn't have. So say, it was Bischoff and Standards, all that, Russo holding us down, and now that these guys are getting a chance to shine, they're proving what they could have been doing all along, that they were fucked by the man. I think that would have been the best way to probably quickly rehab them.
Yeah, like anything, like just you don't even necessarily have to. Well, and they didn't. They got away from calling them WCW, but like even if it wasn't WCW, it was still a gigantic batch of fresh matches that people were excited to see, like legitimately excited to see these. And even if you weren't necessarily using the WCW name, it was still pretty cool that you got the ECW guys, you got like the Rhinos, the Rob Van Dams, the DDPs, and Canyons, and guys who had never been in the WWF system before, who were doing a totally different thing in a totally different way.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think I don't want to say the ending was short-sighted by any stretch. It was still a fantastic show. Continues the stretch now of 4 straight years or 5 straight years, really, if you go back to 97 of awesome SummerSlams. But I don't know, I just thought it would have been a nice alternative thinking on those last 2 matches. And I agree with you, Keith. I think if Vince actually gave a shit about this storyline instead of just burying WCW for his own personal hard-on, the 50-50 thing was pretty stupid. Even for the second biggest show of the year, I think WCW definitely still needed to look strong. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Do you concur, Keith? Do you concur that this continues the run of? I mean, we really haven't had a bad SummerSlam. Not bad. I shouldn't say bad. We really haven't had a mediocre SummerSlam since '96. I mean, pretty much the last 5th year in a row we've had another great SummerSlam.
Yeah, 97 was great. 98 was like off the charts awesome. 99 had some good stuff. I don't remember too much about it. 2000 was really great. So I agree. That was it was a really good run of events for me. And then of course 2002 might have been the best one of all. That was coming next year, but
it even a run of great events still in 01. I mean, Invasion was okay, but
but on a spectacle standpoint, it was awesome. I think.
Right,
like,
exactly.
It didn't have to be a great show. Like it was just this was such a mind-blowing thing that nobody had ever seen before.
Yep, and Backlash and Judgment Day were solid enough. So I'm not gonna say it's a run of great pay-per-views, but it's been a run of very good shows. To great to very good. We haven't had a bad one or a stinker really in 01 so far.
No, definitely not.
All right, well that brings an end here to our review of SummerSlam 01 in the books. Scott, we are almost about halfway through the Invasion. I guess. Mm-hmm. Well, pretty much. We got 3 more Invasion shows to go.
3 left. So. Yep, 3 left.
Mr. Keith, we want to thank you for joining us here tonight, and I think your trip to the vault was quite successful. So we'll have to do this once again. What do you think?
Anytime you want, guys.
Fantastic. Scott will be back. I guess we'll discuss this right now. Mm-hmm. On Friday night, we're recording with Brad and Chad. We're going to do a recap of our experience live in Pittsburgh last weekend. We'll talk about Ring of Honor. We'll talk about the Rumble and all of our other exploits and sicknesses as well. We had quite a good group down there, and it was a really interesting... I'm a guy who's been involved in a lot of weird crowd dynamics. I was there when Mick Foley won the title. Of course, the crowd was bonkers that night. I was there in Providence when Steve Austin came from the bar and wiped out the Alliance. We were there at WrestleMania 20 for Goldberg and Brock Lesnar.
Yes,
and then
we were.
I was in the house for this interesting night in Pittsburgh for the 2014 Rumble. So me, Brad, and Chad are going to talk about that. We'll talk about it with you. Mm-hmm. That should be posted either Friday night or Saturday morning. Next week, we're back on... next week we are off, Scott, as far as the place to be goes. We have plans we can't move Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. We'll be back on Wednesday night with the Kevin Kelly Show and with the main event. Do you have your crew yet for that night, or?
At the moment, it seems like our 4 guys are locked in. Mr. Reish, Mr. Morse, Mr. Duncan, and Mr. Willie have not told me they're not going to be here. But if one of them can't make it, maybe we'll have a surprise alternate. We have a couple of guys in the hopper. And it's definitely going to be a very good, very, very busy show. A lot to talk about in the current state of affairs in pro wrestling right now. So I definitely don't want to miss next week's show.
Yes, indeed. And Kevin, we haven't determined the guest yet, but we'll definitely be talking about all this stuff with Daniel Bryan, CM Punk, and, of course, the goings-on at Ring of Honor as well. So, Scott, I won't be talking to you. Well, I'll talk to you Friday night, and then we'll have a week off. And, of course, you can read Scott Keith over at his place, rspwfaq.com, and on PlaceToBeNation.com each and every week with his NXT review, and each and every month with his pay-per-view rants as well. Go to his blog, click around, comment, help him, come back to Place to Be Nation, click on the Amazon tag there. You can order some stuff and help us out as well. And you can help the whole family. So, for Scott, I'm Justin. We'll be back Friday night with Brad and Chad. Talk to you then.
I wouldn't have opened the door on Vince.
Make him kick it down?
And then he would have lit the apartment on fire with you in it, maybe.
Yeah. Let the bodies hit the road. Let the bodies